It is time to call this meeting to order, and we will start with the flag salute. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Today is the reorganization meeting for the Quakertown Community School Board. We currently do not have a president, so the first order of business here today is for us to appoint a temporary president. So of the remaining 5 board members, I'm looking for nominations from the floor for a temporary president.
I'll nominate Ron Jackson for temporary president.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Sedicum, Dr. Sedicum. There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Aye. So moved. Being the temporary president, my first order of duty is to welcome Judge Roth. There are 4 new board members who are going to be seated tonight, but the first order of duty is that they get sworn in as official board members. I want to welcome Judge Roth. Give you a gracious thank you for coming here, as you are soon to step down from the judge, your position, and just say we're happy as a community to have had you as long as we did.
Well, thank you. And I said earlier, I'm really impressed with how many people came out to see.
I know. You could have sold tickets.
All right. We're going to do this out front. And we have 4 people individually, I understand. So have it by alphabetical order here, and the first one would be Keith Doyle Cucci.
Right behind you.
Oh, good. Come on up.
Hi, Keith. Get up there. No, get up there. Here you go, sir. Thank you very much.
I, David Akmanowitz,
I, David Akmanowitz,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will Jennifer Weed.
Thank you, Judge Roth. Yeah. I'll miss these semi-annual events, I'll tell you that. The board, the full board now being seated, we move on to the primary task before us at this time, which is to nominate an official president for the board going forward. That being said, I am seeking nominations from the floor. Do I have a nomination from anybody for president of the school board for the upcoming year?
I would like to nominate Steve Klein.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Are there any other nominations from anybody else?
I'd like to nominate Ron Jackson.
Second on that one? No one has seconded yet. Oh, the original, for the original one, yeah, it was Dr. Sedeka. Okay.
I'll second.
Was made by Mr. Achmanowitz, and Ms. Mitchell seconded just a second ago. Do we have any other nominations from the floor for any other individuals for president? Not at this time.
You should conduct a roll call, and the first
Correct.
member, the first person who gets 5 votes is the new president of the school board for the next 1-year period.
That is correct. The position of president is voted on in the order in which it was received on the floor. Therefore, Mr. Klein will be the first presented candidate. If he receives 5 votes, he will be the president. There will be no need to go to the second name, just so that everybody does understand the way it will proceed. This being a roll call vote, Mr. Klein is the nomination in front of us for president. I ask that our secretary take the roll and see the votes.
Mr. Anderson?
I'm voting yes for Steve Klein.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Kern?
Yes.
Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Dr. Sedekam?
Yes.
Mr. Ochmanowitz?
Yes.
Ms. Weed?
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell?
We have 5 votes already, though, right? I mean,
It's
okay.
still got to be
Okay, yes.
And Mr. McCucci?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Motion being passed, Mr. Klein is now the president of the school board. My term is over. I shall step down. Oh, wait.
It's not over. You have to preside over the election of the vice president.
Do we, sir? I appreciate that. Thank you. So I get to last a little longer. That being said, the next order of business then is to seat a vice president for the school board. Once again, the floor is open for nominations for vice president. Do I have a nomination from anybody?
I would like to nominate Dr. Sedekam for vice president.
Dr. Sedekam is offered up. Is there a second to that nomination?
I second it.
Kern?
Are there any other nominations from the floor?
I'd like to nominate Kaylin Mitchell.
Kaylin Mitchell is offered up as a candidate. Are there any other? Is there a second for that vote?
I second.
McCucci or we pick one.
Okay.
Are there any other nominations from the floor for any other individuals for vice president? Hearing none, the vote will proceed as with the first one. The first nomination presented was for Dr. Sedekam. Therefore, he is the first nomination offered up. Ms. Bishop will call the roll, and it is a yay or nay to Dr. Sedekam as vice president.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Kern?
Yes.
Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Dr. Sedekam?
Yes.
Mr. Ochmanowitz?
No.
Ms. Weed?
No.
Ms. Mitchell?
No.
Mr. McCucci?
No.
5-4. He gets it.
The vote being 5-4, Dr. Sedekam has been voted as the vice president for the forthcoming year. Is my term now done, sir?
Jackson, you can get up and either move seats or just disappear to the woodwork.
Given us just a couple seconds, Mr. Klein and I were going to alternate seats for a second.
Twice. Do I need to move
No, you're fine where you are.
Okay, I didn't know.
No, you're good.
That's really scraping the barrel there.
Do we need to plug it in or just the battery?
I usually do, but if you don't have your, should be.
Thank you, everybody. The next portion of the meeting is the Board of School Directors is asked to consider setting the following proposed dates for its regular, special, and work sessions to be held during the 2018 calendar year. You will find those list of dates in board docs. It's a rather lengthy list. So do we need to... Pardon? Okay. Looking for a motion to approve that list of dates.
So moved.
Mr. Jackson. Second?
I'll second it.
Dr. Sedicum? Okay.
Sedicum?
Quick one.
Okay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, the next order of business would be to elect 2 representatives to the Upper Bucks County Technical School Joint Operating Committee. We have 2 vacancies. Do I have any nominations of...
I would like to nominate Steve Klein.
I would like to self-nominate, if I can do so.
Okay.
You done?
Do we have...
We haven't had a second yet.
Yeah, do we have a second for Steve Klein?
I'll second.
Thank you. Mr. Akmanowitz?
I would like to self-nominate.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All right.
Other nominations?
Any other nominations? Anybody else? Okay. All those in favor, or may I have a motion to elect David Akmanowitz and Steve Klein as Quakertown representatives to the UBCTS Joint Operating Committee, effective immediately with the completed term ending December 2020 and the unexpired term ending December 2021.
So moved.
Second?
Mr. Klein, may?
Yes.
If I may, if you can explain to, especially the students, what the UPCTS is, I think that would...
Upper Bucks County Technical School, my apologies.
Yes. What was just nominated were our representatives to the tech school, the school board of where a lot of your classmates or maybe some of you go to school, spend a half a day. Just wanted them to understand the importance of the folks that are here today. 3 of the 9 members out there on their board come from Quakertown.
Okay, all in favor of those 2 recommended to fill the seats, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We also need to elect an alternate representative to the Upper Bucks County Technical School Joint Operating Committee. This position is really as an alternate as if one of the other committee members cannot make it. So they would be filling in. So is there anybody that would be interested in taking on that position? Just throw your hat right out there. Anybody, we're looking for anybody. Okay. Well,
I nominate Mr. Kern.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Kern.
Under the bus.
Okay, next we're going to elect a representative to serve as the PSBA liaison for 2018. Do I have any nominations for the PSBA liaison position?
I'll step up to the plate and volunteer to be that individual.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Okay, next we're moving on to the ad hoc committee assignments. There are many committees made up of school board directors and members of the administration. It is by appointment, and I believe that Dr. Harner sent out a list of suggested appointments to those committees, so I'm going to read the list as it were. And this would be my recommendation as president, that we accept all of these recommendations.
I did not hear back from some of the folks on the list I sent out, and you might want to ask.
Okay. What I'll do for each committee, I'll read everyone's name and ask if there's any issues, or if somebody doesn't want to be on it, then we'll take it from there. First would be the Education and Curriculum Committee, which is chaired by Mr. Anderson, Mr. Akmanowitz, and Mr. Kern. You guys willing? Yep. Okay. Mr. Anderson? Okay, thank you. The Policy Committee, we would like that chaired by Jennifer Weed, along with Mr. Makuchi and Mr. Kern. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
It's the riveting committee.
Great for lawyers.
That's what I was told. Thrown under the bus.
Next would be the Facilities Committee. We'd like to appoint Ms. Kaylin Mitchell as the chair and have Keith Makuchi and myself as the other members. Everybody okay with that? Okay. Next would be the Finance Committee. Dr. Sedicum, we'd like you to chair that committee, along with Ms. Mitchell and Mr. Jackson. You guys okay with that? Okay. Next would be the HR Committee, with Mr. Jackson as chair, Jennifer Weed, and Dr. Sedicum as the other two members. Everybody okay? Okay. Then we have the Communications Committee, which is chaired by Mr. Kern, and would include Ms. Kayla Mitchell and Mr. Keith Makuchi. Okay. Last, we have the Quakertown Community Education Foundation Board, which has an opening for a school board member. Meetings are held every other month on a Wednesday, 7:30 at Strayer Middle School. AM, excuse me. Do we have a volunteer for this position?
Yeah, I would appreciate it.
I'll take that one, since I'm the current board member who's on that committee. The Ed Foundation is an independent organization, 501c3 charity. They just got the distinction. Their job is to raise money for which they will, in turn, provide mini grant funding. That's funding in the neighborhood of $500 to teachers who request additional assistance for their classroom, for innovative instructional ideas. We meet once every other month. It's been moved to the second Wednesday of the month, just at the last meeting, and it's only in the once every other month, the second Wednesday at 7:30 a.m., lasts till about 9 o'clock in the morning. And we receive requests from teachers for funding and we approve or deny. It's a good way to give back in addition to the ways you can on the board already. So we're looking for somebody else to take over that from me, or I'll stay on board if we have no other willing people.
Would anybody like that position, to relieve Mr. Jackson of it?
would you like to remain in that position, I guess?
It's not a bad committee. I mean, it meets, like I said, only 6 times a year. It's just that I have so many other things I'm trying to divest myself of a couple of them. That's all. And it's, yeah, so, I mean, if you're...
Personally, I'm worried about the time. I can't attend to that time in the morning.
Yeah.
You change when it meets based on...
Well, we used to meet at 4 in the afternoon, so...
It's not good either. No.
So I'm getting a whole lot of notes on that one.
It's not a good
No.
You might explain why you turned to me.
Yeah, Mr. Roth is actually also on the committee, that's why I think. So anyway.
Can I nominate John Kernigan?
If we change the meeting place to like the proper.
Yeah. I will, let's leave this one alone. I will maintain my residency on that committee, so.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. All right. And this ends the reorganization part of the meeting. So, I'd like to take a 5-minute break, just so everybody can get resettled and everything. So if we can get back to business at 7:30. Is that good?
In 5 minutes, we'll begin the regular board meeting. That's what that means.
Do I always have to do Google Chrome?
Yes.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Get one of these fancy little waters.
The fridge right inside the right of the door on the bottom.
Yes, absolutely.
His mom is
So I can do the combination. I'm going to play with this at home. Yeah. Do I have to do my password here?
No, this is your
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Excited?
Yes.
Not capitalized, it's just...
I know. And then
I wish I could vote because I would have nominated myself. Congratulations. Thank you, sir.
Can I change it? For now, that's fine.
now here's your meeting.
That's what you emailed to us already. Yeah.
I just click on there. Or maybe you have to join the meeting.
Do I have to join it?
There you go. Go down to here. Let's do the next one.
Oh, okay. Nice to hang out.
Pardon?
Leo Burnaby happens to be one of my daughter's best friends. Yeah, I didn't realize he was your student rep. That's hilarious. He's great. No, and I know the girl too. What's her name? Sadie Fowler.
Thank you.
Yeah, they're good. Okay, so I can, yeah.
Thank you.
Play with this.
That's very confusing.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And nobody else will
Then I don't have to. Oh, okay. Nice.
When you close it, then it will yell it.
Does it save my notes?
It does save
Or
your notes.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I like that. Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
About the,
Actually, the Canadian Bronson sounds good, but the time is not good. Well, in the mornings, when you're working, and yeah. I do. So, yeah. Okay.
I was the former policy committee chair.
Oh, good. Can I talk to you then?
You can. I can get you up to speed on that. Yeah. As a lawyer, it may be a piece of cake.
You don't mind?
Of course not. Of course not.
What is your daughter's name?
Morgan.
Oh, yeah, well, I'll show them. I'm a kick butt. Right? Yeah. How many teachers you can let go? I have one more. I'm teasing. I'm teasing. Yeah. Unless I'm in just bring her.
Okay, thank you, everyone. A couple of announcements real quick. This meeting is being recorded, video and audio recorded, and I would ask that all the board members and people up at the dais please speak into your microphone so that the recording will pick that up. Is there anyone in the audience that is also recording? If there is, please let us know. Okay, very good. There will also be a short executive session after the meeting to discuss a contractual issue. Okay, next we'd like to move on to the reports section. The first being our student representative report, and we would like to welcome back Mr. Leo Bernabe. Welcome back.
Thank you. All right, so first off, I'd like to welcome the new board members. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Leo Bernabe, and I'll be here at several meetings just reporting on what's going on at the high school. So first off, with the holiday season approaching, our student council has been busy layering our hallways with decorations just as they did before Halloween. At this point, many seniors are starting to hear back from the colleges they've applied to, many acceptances. Last Saturday, the 6th grade center held a sitting of the SAT, and the turnout was extremely large. The line was out the door. People were parked all the way along Main Street. A lot of kids were getting in last-minute testing. As most of you know, football ended the season with a tough loss against Pembridge on Thanksgiving. But the winter sports at this point are almost all underway, and last Thursday at the high school, we held a blue and white celebratory night, just sort of kicking off the season. Also, the Technology Student Association is collecting food for this holiday season for needy veterans on December 18th at Strayer during their open shop from 6:30 to 8 p.m. There will be a Barnes & Noble book fair at the Promenades on Wednesday, December 13th from 6 to 8 p.m. and the proceeds benefit the QCHS library and will include a performance by the Varsity Singers and a display of artwork from QCHS students. And last but not least, our choir will be hosting their annual winter concert on December 19th and the 21st in the QPAC at 7:30 p.m. And our winter band concert will be on December 12th at 7:30 p.m. in the QPAC as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Excuse me for just 1 second here. I have to sign a few things, and I have to remember how to spell my name.
Yeah, this is spelled kind of funny, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Through no fault of my own.
Sir, while you're doing that, I can kick off the superintendent's report.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. First up, I'd like to have our 2 Boy Scouts. I'm putting you up in the hot seat up front. Yes, this is what we always do when Boy Scouts show up or someone is here to get a MERT badge for citizenship in the community. We have 2 students, Alec Chan and Dominic Ficara. Dominic is a Star Scout. Alex is a first-class Scout.
Yep.
And what I told them is if they don't talk about themselves for at least a couple minutes, then I start asking them questions, interrogating them in front of everybody. So let's see how they do. what they're doing is they just had to come to the meeting, but by standing up here speaking, they've knocked off a couple of requirements for the public speaking merit badge. Please.
Hello, I'm Alex Chan. I am a first-class scout for Troop 13, and I've been in the troop for almost 3 years now. My accomplishments in the troop is I've been to MYLT, in which I have passed my National Youth Leadership course. I am now patrol leader for the Younger Scouts, and I am the den chief for Pack 13. What I like about scouting is just all the camping trips and meeting new people around the world and in other schools and troops. I also have an SPL named John Jasinski, which couldn't be here tonight, who is basically the boss around the whole entire troop and keeps everyone in order so that we don't all get out of hand. I'd like to call up Dominic Vaquera.
Hi everyone, so my name is Dominic Vaquera. I am as well with Alex. I'm part of Troop 13. I've been in scouting for around 3 years, and I really like it because of all the camping trips, meeting all the new scouts, and being able to lead them. I am a patrol leader, and I did also do the MYLT, which is known as the National Youth Leadership Training Program within our council. I am a patrol leader, like I said, and yeah, that's about it.
No, before you, Mr. Chan, come on back.
Oh, I have to come back now.
Yeah, it's just a tad short. What schools do you go to?
I go to Strayer Middle School.
And?
Strayer Middle School.
Okay, and you're in 8th grade?
Yeah.
I can tell by your height and just how you are. What do you love about Strayer?
Probably just participating in class and getting to meet new people.
Participating in class, meeting new people?
Yep.
Favorite teachers? You love them?
Mr. Cherrybon, Mrs. Heisler.
Awesome. Great. Sir?
Like Alex, I like to play in the band.
Okay.
Yeah, meeting new people, participating in after-school activities. I like Mr. Lenkos, my science teacher.
Great. And you've got to be your chance, so you got to be playing in the band, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Are you in the jazz band also there?
Yes. I just made jazz band this year.
Now, this puts you on the hot spot. If you were a board member, what would you like them to change?
Oh! I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about this one. Probably get Milford back sometime.
Yes! I have to clap for that one.
Good.
Yes, I do.
You're up.
With what?
If you were a board member, what would you change?
You know, I like the school district for how it really is. I like how everyone's nice to each other in schools, and I like all the after-school participation within the activities, and that's about it.
Good.
I like how it is.
Thank you. Now you can sit down. Now this gets to one of my favorite parts besides Boy Scouts. I was an Eagle Scout. I am an Eagle Scout. I'm involved in the Bucks County. When I moved here, they knew I was a Scouter, so I'm involved at the council level. But I've been in Boy Scouts since I was 11 years old in Cheltenham. And first time I left, other than going down to Cape May, New Jersey, because I grew up right down the road, was going off to Philmont, the National Boy Scout camp in New Mexico, not knowing that years later I'd be a world traveler, having lived in Asia and Europe and all that, and brought my son up through the Scouts and my daughter up through the Girl Scouts when she was a youngster. But anyway, scouting is real important to me, and hopefully you all understand the value of what they do for the community, and what they do is in preparing them to be great citizens. Also, little factoid, if you didn't see it in the funny papers, the newspaper. not the comics. They've, I think it's beginning next year, the Boy Scouts allows girls in. So it's a big paradigm shift for them, and they're getting, I'm the chair of the membership committee for the county, or for the 3-county area, and that's going to become an interesting task for us as we take that on. So that's great, and I just wanted to share them up here with the community. Now, Varsity Singers, Jonathan Lechner, our director, has the floor after I do my brief introduction. While I was wearing this lovely sweater, on the day before Thanksgiving, 110 of our choir members, along with about 10 chaperones, and I was lucky enough to be one of the chaperones, went up there, and I had 7 of our students. And yes, where's my team? Yeah, there's my team. They came in tonight thinking they were going to best me, and I wouldn't have my sweater. How many people have been out to Times Square? Times Square? You know where Forever 21 is?
Oh, yeah.
This is my Forever 21 sweater. True statement. We wore that the rest of the day. We got it when we first got there. But anyway, that's why I had it on, and Jonathan would not let them have them violate their official uniform, so he had them take off. So I took mine off so I could be official in my suit. Sir, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. The Varsity Singers are going to share 3 short holiday selections with you, but before we do, we'd like to recognize that we are commemorating Pearl Harbor Day. So let's have a moment of silence, and we'll follow that with our national anthem. Thank you.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. And the rockets were there, the boats bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Hark how the bells, sweet silver bells, all seem to say, throw cares away. Christmas is here, bringing the cheer to young and old, meek and the bold. Ding dong, ding dong, God is the song, ding dong, ring dong, merrily. One seems to hear words of the cheer from everywhere, filling the air. Oh, how they love praising the sound, Lord, and the gay ring, while people sing songs of the cheer. Christmas is here. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. Sweet silver bells all seem to say, throw cares away. Christmas is here, bringing the cheer to young and old, meek and the bold. Ding dong, ding dong, God is the song, ding dong, ring dong, merrily. One seems to hear words of good cheer from everywhere, filling the air. Oh, how they love raising the sound, Lord, and the gaily they ring, while people sing songs of good cheer. Christmas is here. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong, ding dong.
Dawn on they send on with a head, their troubles home to every home.
This is a challenging room in which to face your audience. So we figured we'd try it from the sides. Now I'm going to have the singers come up front, and we'd like to do two things. The middle number, we would like to sing to the board because it's so appropriate for education, and then we'll turn our backs to the board and sing to the audience, and so everybody's getting a certain amount of attention. Hopefully nobody feels slighted. So come on up, singers, and I'll explain the next number. Go ahead. Go, go, go. Right, we're going to... You're fine. You're going to be backwards, don't worry. Boys are going to be facing on the board. Sorry. This number is entitled The World for Christmas, and it sounds like we're being very selfish, but I wanted to read you what the composer said about it. And this number may bring a tear to your eye, hopefully one of joy, but the author says, "For a long time I've been trying to find a way to express my concern for the future of our planet in music and words, and I only had the phrase, 'Give me a present for the future,' with its double meaning, which captured my feelings exactly, but I couldn't come up with anything else. So one day last winter, I met with my friend Emma's 3-day-old daughter, Leah, and she made me realize that it wasn't my worry that needed to be expressed, but rather Leah's unspoken wish, and so I have borrowed her voice in order to ask you all to take care of our planet so that one day she and all the children of the world can inherit the beautiful, blue, green, healthy planet of their dreams, the world for Christmas." All right. Harden our backs. You guys back up a little bit. There you go. Take a picture of you. Back up, back up. Take a little step. Back up. Back up. There you go. There you go. Good. You're fine.
Plenty of room. Keep on coming.
I know we're backwards too. All right, let's do it. Ready, Pete?
Yeah. You're behind,
The night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature is stirring, not even a mouse. The stockings are hung by the chimney with care, but hopes for Saint Nicholas I wish I could share. I am new to this world, I arrived here this morn, to this beautiful planet, all beat up and torn. I don't need a gift, need no more than I've got. Hear the unspoken wish from
come to hand the girls, and we'll sing the last note. Get out of there.
Aren't they great? I know a lot of those girls up there.
And our last tune is entitled Here We Come A-Caroling, and it uses a beautiful piano accompaniment. So if anyone would like to donate a piano to the District Service Center, I'm sure they'd be glad to have it, but we'll have to do without. So if you hear some empty spaces, it's the piano.
Here we come, a-caroling among the leaves so green. Here we come, a-caroling among the leaves so green. Here we come, a-wandering so fair to be seen. Love and joy come to you and to all your family too. And God bless you and send you a happy new year. And God send you a happy new year. We come to bring a song of cheer to neighbors far and wide, a carol of the season for all who here abide.
Set for us a table full of hearty Christmas fare. Sing with us a carol in glad celebration there.
Love and joy come to you and to all your family too. And God bless you and send you a happy new year. And God send you a happy new year.
Here we come,
caroling among the leaves so green. God bless the master of this house, likewise the mistress too, and all the little children that round the table come.
here we come a-caroling, here we come a-caroling.
Here we come a-caroling, here we come a-caroling. Here we come a-caroling, here we come, here we come a-caroling, here we come. Love and joy come to you and to all your family too. And God bless you and send you a happy new year.
And God send you a happy new year.
Here we come, a-caroling among the leaves so green. Here we come.
One of the things I learned a long time ago, back in the late 90s when I became a high school principal, that athletics and performing arts, visual arts, creates a culture around a school district grows and a community grows. A lot of you parents who get my emails and my blogs, whatever, I've talked about the 3 A's, academics, the arts, and athletics. Earlier this week, we received a notification for the on the 8th annual awarding of AP Honor Roll for districts across the country. We made it for the fourth year in a row. If you are parents there, if you clicked on the link, you would see in the write-up there that to get in there is every year that we have to have more students taking upper level classes, AP courses, and passing the exam, and that we're more inclusive. Just as an idea of all the high school students that are in the room right now, and you guys up here in front, they're going to be recognized for athletics. How many of you guys have taken at least one AP class? We have grown in the last 4 years from 18% of our senior class to 42% of the members in the senior class taking an AP course, and then about 34% last year successfully passing an AP exam, which our college readiness is going up. For those, and this is a kind of a lesson for the new board members who haven't heard this before, because they're making policy decisions, budget decisions about programs. Students who perform in the performing arts, that's where Frank Parker's band and Jonathan Lechner's choir and varsity singers and all that, they have about an average almost 3/4 of a grade higher than students who don't. Those who perform or participating in sports that we're going to recognize next have a half a grade higher. It's a tremendous investment for a community and culture. You know, I watch and I see Miss Vanderslice in the audience. I don't know if Frank's here. You here, Frank? Nope. Joe Santinelli, you here? You know, these guys work incredible hours building programs well beyond the duty day, and I just great value to you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
I've come in here so many nights driving into a sporting event, leaving a sporting event or another event, and Jonathan's in there with about 3 or 4 kids. You may see him in my tweets, because I want people to know the sacrifice that our teachers make, and what a great program we have. So thank you very much. Happy holidays. Thank you. One of the things that I always like to do after each athletic season, and as Leo mentioned, we just finished the fall sports season and we're already into practices and scrimmages in the winter sports season. But I like to recognize the top athletes and also teams if we have some great performances. Hudson, are you here? Hudson, come on up, big guy. Thank you, sir. Hudson Delisle is you second in the state in the 800 meter? Third in the state as a junior in the 800 meter. In the fall here, he's also doing cross country on the off time. You're not moving slowly because of injury, are you?
No.
Okay, just checking you out. It's just the end of a long day. Yeah, I'm concerned about your health, big guy. What do you do? You're doing winter track, right? Yeah. Anyway, he took first team all-league in the fall. He's exclusive. He made it into a very exclusive sub 16-minute 5K run. He ran it at 15:56 this year. Oh, what meet was that?
That was Paul Short. So it was a meet at Lehigh.
Up at Lehigh University with a lot of good college people looking at you. He's already committed. I thought he was going to my alma mater, but he's going to Penn State, so it's awesome. So congratulations. Tim, are you here? Tim Shevlin?
Tim is not. He's having knee surgery tomorrow.
Uh-oh.
I would tell you, Tim Shevlin is a football player for us, 37 catches this year for 472 yards. His total receiving yards is 1,138 for his career receiving yards, and he's third place in all-time list. Is that right, Sylvia?
Correct.
Third place in Quakertown history. Tim's a leader, a great American. I would tell you that both sides of the ball, he's just an amazing young man, and I'm sorry he's not here, but I want to recognize him. He is a senior, so he's going off to where? Do we know yet? Don't know yet. Okay. Nick, come on up. Nick Fresh. Nick, stand right here, big guy. You can see he's not up here for dancing. He is a lineman. He has 29 tackles, 7 for a loss, 3 sacks, 1 fumble, caused fumble this past year. Just a great American, and I just want to thank you. I would tell you watching our football team going up guys against guys that are so much bigger than us, the spirit that George Bannis and the coaches bring into the team, and the energy, the positive energy. And many of you, how many of you are here on Friday Night Lights? How many? Hey, show of hands. How many here on Friday Night Lights? A lot of folks. It's a big, great community event. The guys have my sweaters on. See? Thank you very much. I appreciate that. You can go now. But anyway, thank you very much, sir. I'm very proud of you. Thank you. The next guy is like Mr. Photogenic on the football team because he's always in the newspaper. Come on up, Nick. Nick Levinsky is for this year's football. He had 71 solo and 45 assisted tackles. He's Mr. Inside. He's everywhere, making the critical plays. Of all the games that we were behind and we came back and won in overtime or whatever, his name was right next to it in the newspaper story. How many? I sent you a couple articles this year, didn't I? I know you got one. But he's Mr. Photogenic out there. Also 18 tackles in 1 game. So he has the second all-time record for Quakertown. So we're very proud of you, big guy. Thank you very much. Fascinating young lady who's been up here before. Haley, where are you? Can't hide. Yes.
Yeah, hail.
This is probably the most humble athlete we have. As you can see, she doesn't want to be here. But thank you, Maria, for getting your daughter here. Come on up. Come on to face the crowd. There you go. This lady made All-State. She is first team All-State for girls soccer. As last year you were on you made it up first team all regional, like the eastern part of Pennsylvania. This year as a junior, she's All-State. Again, I'm trying to recruit her for my alma mater. I'm very unsuccessful. But she is already committed verbal to Lafayette as a junior. She's got a great, bright future, and all that she does is she's also an outstanding scholar. So, Haley, thank you. And I like to develop our young talent. Some are already come with the natural skills, like Leo, our student rep. I have Haley up here doing it. She'll be back this year, board members. Our next up is Ashley Gluck, another soccer player. This year, and we'll talk about the team in a second, but this year she was the lead scorer, and she's, according to her classmates, she is the fastest human ever. I thought it was interesting the other night when I went to the soccer banquet. She had ducked out for a little bit, and they were already doing awards, so she had to quickly get in there. So I watched her move in quickly back with her team, so congratulations. Mm-hmm. Very proud of you.
Thank you.
Now, the next person is the one who changed our world and put Quakertown soccer on the map. It's a team effort, obviously a team sport. Yes, ma'am, come on up. Morgan Small, our goalie. We'll get pictures for you, Mom.
Yeah, you don't need to do it.
Yeah, there you go.
My picture.
You can come on out. Come on out. Take your time. She's also like Haley. She's a little shy, but I tell you what, she's fierce. When we went up against Penridge, the #1 team in District 1, the #1 ranked team, was it 3rd in the state?
Something like that.
And we went into double overtime. Sadly, it was a board meeting for me. I was not allowed to go to the game instead, but I had, I got to work. But going to the games is a privilege, watching her work. And she put us in overtime, all the saves. And I tell you what, and when they went to put down the penalty kicks, she protected her goal. We beat the #1 team in the District 1, 3rd team in the state. And we went on to 2 more games after that, or 1 more game?
2.
2 more games after. Thank you, Mom.
It was very exciting.
I tell you, Morgan is both a scholar and an athlete and a great citizen, and very proud of you. Just kind of as an idea on how our 2017 year went this past fall, 11 shutouts as our starting goalkeeper. 11 shutouts. Not much gets by on this young lady. Also, she was all league 3 consecutive years. And our league has moved around when she was playing, when we were playing the other teams. So that's quite a statement. Our next one and last individual ones are our tennis players here. Ladies tennis, you here? Hey, come on up. Which one do we have? Maddie? Okay. Maddie and Riley. Maddie Dayton and Riley Hetrick are they were 21-7 overall as a doubles team. They helped the doubles team record in back-to-back winning seasons, and you went on to districts, correct?
Yes.
And how far did you make it in the districts?
Like the first round.
First round, but you made it in the districts.
We did.
And we're putting tennis on the map for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The last recognition tonight for sports and recognitions overall for students are our girls soccer team. Coach Mike, would you come up too? Girls soccer team, please come up. Any other coaches? Sir, can you get up there with them?
Grace has been injured most of the season.
You get the sweater effect too?
Yeah, torn ACL.
These young ladies, I watch them in the summertime when they go in there and they start running their summer camp for younger soccer players in the community all the way through the rest of the season. This team right here made Quakertown history. They went the furthest ever for a girls soccer program in Quakertown, the furthest ever for soccer in Quakertown into the postseasons. And 4 games in the postseason, Coach?
Yes, that's correct, Dr.
Four games, and I know with the way the coach was talking the other night, they'll start practicing in January.
That's correct.
We'll be back at it, and we're going to go a lot deeper, especially when they have in January the new turf field will be ready to go. So congratulations to our girls, and Coach Mike. I will tell you that we are blessed. So anyway, congratulations, ladies. The next part of the superintendent's report is talking about the welcome workplace. Ladies, I know now I know what you guys take for courses, generally speaking, and I know you need to get to work. So why don't you don't have to stick around. Yeah, please. If you have a ride, get going. Thank you very much. You're up next. We have 2 presentations tonight. One by Laura Lomax of the Pearl S. Buck International Organization, and then presentation by the Parent Committee on Student Reassignments. Before I ask Laura to come up and give her presentation on the Welcome Workplace, you need to know that our topic is very serious business for us. Back in October, most, if not all of you, heard that at a football game, some of our students misbehaved and said some very hateful things to students visiting students. How one incident can grow and become and tarnish not only an individual's reputation, it tarnish the community's reputation. If you go on our website, every article that's been in the newspaper since the early October on racism and hate and all that, and incidents have been happening in our schools across the region. Quakertown was like the epicenter. which is very sad. We keep on, our names keep on coming up as a district with having issues. The board took a very serious position. I asked for permission to have this conversation as a very public conversation, besides all the behind the scenes disciplinary things that we had to work through. But I would tell you that I've been very grateful. Our teachers have been very supportive. They sent me a note right away that they wanted to be supportive in this initiative. The boards, obviously, their support and administration. So what our strategy has been a lot of behind the scenes private things, but the public things that you need to know about is our work with the Peace Center. We've had the Peace Center in, and the model that they recommend that they found out from national research is working with students on about respect, tolerance, and those kind of things that kind of definitely stir the pot on school district grounds, school district activities, athletic events, whatever. SAGLY is a great place to start is 4th grade. So 2 of our 6 elementary schools have already had training. I expect by the end of January, the training by the Peace Center should be completed across all our 4th graders, and that'll become our norm. We've engaged with the Pearl Buck, and what you're going to find out from Laura is what we're doing there. I personally went down to Cheltenham the week after it happened. I offered to go down there the next work day, but the superintendent said we'd do a week later, and I apologized for the misbehavior, misconduct of just a handful of our students. But we read in the newspaper, this is not just a Quakertown issue. This is a national issue, probably a world issue, because we don't get along. A lot of countries, and us included, we have a lot of work to do, and coming to the table and talking about it and training our adults in our system right now is my priority and the board's priority. So they funded a $30,000 work, and initially $30,000 work with the Pearl Buck, because it's going to take a lot of training, assessments up front, and to do that. Another thing that you need to know about is that some of our students in the Spirit Club at the high school went on down to Cheltenham after I went down myself, and they met with the students where the racism had happened to, the victims of the racism. So we're working through it through the athletic season in the fall with our friends at Cheltenham, and you got to know that that's my alma mater. And right before the incident happened, I had welcomed all those people, and I think I shook most of the cheerleaders' hands, because I got there right before 7 and went right down the sideline and talked to the coach and all that. And I will tell you, what you need to know, and for the good of the board, what has been out in the paper has been blown up to some extent, but the fact that it happened is what we're addressing. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Laura Lomax, the Senior Vice President for Programs at Pearl Buck. It's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for having me here this evening. Thank you to the board. Thank you to the community. I wrote this down so I don't go on too long, so I will be concise. So again, thank you, Dr. Harner. My name is Laura Lomax. I am the Vice President of Programs at Pearl Buck. I started there about 3 years ago, but I've had a long relationship. Can you all hear me okay? No.
Can you move the mic down a little, please?
I've had a long relationship with the organization. When I was 10, my family moved from a very diverse University City, or West Philadelphia, to Hilltown in the late 60s. My parents actually bought the home and the property from Pearl Buck in the early 70s. I attended her 80th birthday. How many people know who Pearl Buck is or have been to? Yay, thank you. Right down the road. So I attended her 80th birthday, her final birthday, and I had no idea that 40 plus years from then, I'd be working for the organization she founded, upholding her mission and vision. Since I started there, I've learned a lot about Pearl Buck's writing. She wrote over 1,000 works, received Nobel and Pulitzer Prizes. Her humanitarian work, which we continue in 6 Asian countries, and her activism, which was the most shocking to me. I had no idea that Pearl Buck stood up for against discrimination anywhere she saw it. She fought against the Japanese internment during the World War II, Chinese Exclusion Act. She fought against lynching, segregation. She was an activist, and I lived right next door and had no idea. I went to the Penn Ridge schools. Sorry. I don't know if I should edit that out. But it's interesting because people would come up to me and say, "Oh, you're a Lomax. You're the only black people in this country, in this county." And I was just like, I never thought of it that way. But now that they mentioned it, in the 60s, it was very not diverse. Of course, now we have watched the demographics of our nation and our community change dramatically. In Dublin, where I still live, 2 doors from Pearl Buck, the gas station is now owned by Bangladeshis. My postmaster is from India, and my local supermarket carries tomatillas and plantains to service my Mexican neighbors that live in the apartment complex down the street. Yes, we live in a changing world, and our job is to prepare our students to be contributing citizens. A friend of mine who was a keynote speaker said this quote, which I thought was pretty relevant. When my father and mother applied for a job, they competed with people in their town or city where they lived. When I applied for a job, I competed with people living in my country. When my children apply for a job, they're competing against the world. So just to give you a little bit of my background, after living in this area for a long time, I moved away. I lived in New York. I went to New York University as an anthropology major. I also lived in Los Angeles, starting up another company. I lived in Israel for a year. I traveled throughout the Middle East, West Africa, and India. I spent much of my career, I usually say in prison, but working in prison, in correctional health care, throughout the facilities throughout the U.S. This was a cultural experience for me. It was like working in another world. I am a fellow at the Intercultural Communications Institute, which is the organization where I get my training, which keeps me informed about all the social and societal changes that are happening. I work with a cohort of scholars, teachers, practitioners, and learners to teach how to become culturally competent. A little bit about Pearl Buck International, where I work. First of all, Pearl Buck International, it's a National Historic Landmark. Again, 20 minutes from here. We tell stories about Pearl Buck and her historic house, and we have changing exhibits, and we have an educational program. And as I said earlier, we operate in 6 Asian countries where we provide education, food, and health care. My key focus is the Welcome Workplace, and that's what I want to share with you a little bit about that today. That is a model for creating a responsive learning community, meaning a climate that is safe, where academic programs create graduates that become productive citizens, where parents are engaged, and the community supports the district, and vice versa. So what do? Basically, we say that we take an inside-out approach because we start with an assessment that measures the individual and group ability to effectively navigate differences. When we talk about difference, we talk about gender, age, race, socioeconomics. When you look at these schools, it is just so diverse, and I don't mean ethnicity, but the other day I locked myself out of my car, not to start rambling, but I was at a school, and just students were coming in, and they were tall. Some looked at me in my eye, some looked away. They were all different colors, sizes. And when you think about having thousands and thousands of people in one place and coordinating the education and the growth and development, that's a phenomenal task. And I really take my hat off to Dr. Harner, the teachers, the board, and all the other staff at Quakertown. So that's my job, to create a cohesive system. Why are we unique? All of our work is research-based, beginning with an assessment. And we're going to be working with all 400 staff, board members, teachers, admin, principals, everyone. We work with individuals and groups. So we do group workshops, but we also do one-on-one work. We incorporate the most recent research theory on communication, human behavior, anthropology, psychology, sociology. Pearl Buck, in 1944, she was just really distraught about the condition of interracial relations in the U.S. And she envisioned an institute taking a scientific approach to this issue. And the institute would have scholars that were psychologists, anthropologists, etc. So we are continuing that mission. Our workshops are interactive and experiential, and we help organizations build their internal capacity to sustain a welcoming classroom. So again, how do we work? Assessment, training, the internal accountability group, online resources, and then a post-assessment. So why now? Again, I said the demographics are changing so dramatically in our nation and in our community, and it's reflected in the classroom. Students today will encounter a broad spectrum of people and should be prepared to effectively work and live with others. We live in a very litigious society. Being culturally competent, a culturally competent organization is a risk management tool. Sadly, the average cost of a discrimination lawsuit can be up to $125,000, the average, not including costs associated with absences, low morale, and poor public relations. Currently, we're working in 5 area districts, fulfilling Pearl Buck's vision for a good and peaceful world, and to create a school climate where all students can succeed and become good citizens. I look forward to working with Quakertown Community School District and with the community here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you all.
Ms. Lomax, before you leave real quickly, I would just like to make a couple comments if I could, please.
Sure.
I had the pleasure of meeting you recently at the meeting at Strayer Middle School, and you and I conversed for quite some time. I just want to say that what we're doing and what you are going to help us do is very, very, if not the most important thing on our agenda right now, because what happened with the football game was, I think, embarrassing to everybody in this region. I've lived here since 1988, and I've raised my kids here. And I am so happy that you're here. And I have a lot of confidence after speaking with you that you are really going to help us to address this, and we all need to be a part of the solution here. We need to talk to our kids, and we need to really think about how things are in the way of relations with other people of all races, genders, etc., and so forth. So I want to thank you for taking your time for coming here tonight, and I think we're in good hands.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Edwards, the next item is yours.
Okay, well, not really. What we're going to do tonight is do the Elementary Reassignment Committee report that was given in November. Not all of the new board members were able to attend, and we want to make sure that everyone has had the benefit of all the information. And so our committee agreed to come back and take us through the presentation a second time. Joe, you want to flip? Can you flip? Yeah, it's okay. Okay. Just a reminder that the charge to the committee was very specific in terms of what they were to consider. It was to generate options for the reassignment of elementary students and evaluate those options based on a set of criteria. And they did report to the board initially on November 9th. Okay. There are 7, I think, members of the committee that are here this evening. I just want to introduce them briefly, and then I'll let them take over the presentation. I'm just going to go from left to right there, Becky. So you're up first. So we have Becky Kowalski, Sarah Litvinchuk, Amy Harwick, Diane Ricino, Colleen Miller. I know Steph Sikowski's here somewhere. And Cara DiLiberto is also here this evening. John Sell, who is on the committee and participated in the initial presentation, is actually doing volunteer work in Texas, helping to rehab homes down there. So he was unable to be here this evening, but he is certainly doing very good work. So, ladies, I'm going to turn it over to you to take us through the presentation. And the clicker is right up on the podium, which is why I didn't have it.
Turn it on the side there.
Oh, I see it. There we go. Good evening, everyone. So we had the privilege of working on this committee through the last few months, and some of the things that were important to us starting out was to get the input from the community. So we had all of our meetings open to the public. We had the schedule posted on the website. The detailed minutes were shared with the public each month. And we had a mailbox set up, which each meeting we started out by looking at those emails that came into the committee, understanding what the current in the public was, and addressing those things as we went through. Oh, I forgot I had the clicker. So there were some key things that we reviewed as a committee. Building use and capacity, enrollment projections, class sizes, plan developments, capital maintenance needs, curriculum and academic programming, financial options and impact, and budget projection models. Our philosophy really fed into the next slide, which is the decision criteria. So we looked at, number 1, the impact to the students and families in the districts, especially TV. The impact to the academic programming, impacts on facilities and safety. Safety was a main concern that came from the public, and we made sure that we spent a lot of time on that issue. Impact on short-term and long-term finances, and then what would be our return on investment as a district. And I'm going to turn it over to Steph.
Okay, the group looked at several options over the course of the few months that we met. The first set of options, which we designated with the letter A, and then after that the multiple options after that, looked at grade configurations that are exactly the same as we have now. So elementary school students would be K through 5. We would have a 6th grade center. 7th and 8th would be at the middle school, and 9 through 12 would be at the high school. And under all of these, the 7 through 12 were unaffected. The second series of options that we looked at were slightly different at the elementary level. Elementary would be K through 6 instead of K through 5. We would still have a 7 and 8, and then a 9 through 12 building at the high school. And then the third, which was designated with Cs, those were K through 4. 5th and 6th would be together, and then 7 and 8 at the middle school and 9 through 12 at the high school. The options that we looked at in detail, there were 2 with the current configuration, 1 with the K through 6 model, and 1 with the K through 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 through 12. Option A1, which there was a large matrix, which I think all of the members of the board should have the matrix. So under option A1, just some of the highlights of that. The grade level configuration, again, would be K through 5 and 6 at the 6th grade center, so no change there. All of the TV students, the kids that currently attend there, would attend POF. One of the advantages of this was keeping the Tehican Valley students together. But there were some disadvantages with this option. The option would require 8 to 10 modular classrooms at POF indefinitely to accommodate those additional students. The size of POF, obviously, would be far larger than it is today. It didn't really address any of the issues identified by the Facilities Committee in 2016. And there were some significant safety concerns in terms of where those modulars would be placed and how students would get to and from those from the main building to the modulars. Option B1, again, this would be elementary K through 6th. So this would require the current 6th grade center to become an elementary school, and then all of the existing elementary schools, with the exception of Tecan Valley, would stay elementary, but they would be K through 6, not K through 5. Strayer would remain unchanged, and the high school would be 9 to 12. Major advantages of this would that the students over the course of their term at Quakertown would only change buildings twice. So you would be at elementary, you would change to Strayer for 7 and 8, and then you would change again at the high school. It did also provide additional space at the elementary schools, and it did fully utilize the capacity at the 6th grade center. Some disadvantages, there were quite a few. 6th grade stays in the elementary school district-wide, and there were a couple concerns regarding curricular and extracurricular activities. More extensive redistricting was required. All of the Tehican Valley students plus 20% of the elementary students across the district would be affected by this option. So that is a large number of students. The 6th grade center would require some renovations. It was originally designed as a middle school, then a freshman center, now a 6th grade center. So now you would be having kindergartners, first, second graders there. So there would be some renovations required to accommodate the smaller students, bathrooms, playground. And again, it didn't address any of the issues identified in the facilities plan. The last option that we looked at in detail is option C2. So the elementary would be K through 4. The 6th grade center would be 5th and 6th grade. Strayer would be 7th and 8th, and a high school would be 9th through 12th. Under this scenario, all the Tehican Valley students would be split between NIDIG, QE, TRUM, and POF, per the map that was compiled by Levy, and we'll get into that later on, and all neighborhoods would stay together. The advantages is it would create some space at the elementary buildings, and it did fully utilize the capacity at the 6th grade center. Unfortunately, the 6th grade center is not big enough to accommodate 2 grade levels. So the disadvantage is that it would require, again, 8 to 10 modulars. Those modulars would have to be placed along 9th Street. So not very attractive, and they would be there again indefinitely. There was no short-term identification that it would be just 3 years it would be needed. It would be an indefinite solution. All of the 5th grade students would go to the 6th grade center 1 year early, and there would be some academic and curricular challenges there. Now I'm going to turn it over to Colleen, and she is going to talk to you about the solution that we are recommending.
Okay, so I'm going to review the option that the committee is recommending, which we are calling option A2 with the if. So after thorough evaluation and research, this is our recommendation, and you'll see throughout my portion of the presentation, and then Stephanie will come back, that we are only recommending option A2 if the board considers the if portion of the option, which I'll get into detail with. The grade level configuration for this option is K5 in elementary, 6th at the 6th grade center, and no change above 6th grade. The redistricting method is that the students would go, students from TV would go to NIDIG, QE, POF, and Trumbowersville, and that all neighborhoods would be kept together. So there would be no splitting of any developments. A major advantage of this is that from the committee's perspective, we looked at this and thought this was the least disruptive, the least costly when we're looking at temporary costs for things like modulars. This option doesn't involve any modulars at all. Students would remain inside the building, which was a serious safety consideration for the committee. It provides a clear avenue to creating the means to accomplish the facilities plan, and it is the only option with a plan to address the long overlooked facilities issues, especially at the elementary level. There are some disadvantages to this option. One of the ones that the committee is going to acknowledge is that there would be additional students at each of those 4 elementary schools from Tohickon Valley. And I'll get into kind of what that would make classroom size look like further in the slides. And the if of this option is that if the board chooses to go with option A2, then the committee is recommending that the board chooses to pursue the NIDIG renovations and additions. So that would be much needed renovations to the NIDIG elementary school building, and in addition with an additional 200 seats to increase capacity there. Just briefly, some pros and cons of this option. It is the lowest cost when we're looking at temporary costs for things like modulars. I'll get into costs for the renovation and the addition further in the presentation. More funds would be available to address capital needs, maintenance, and other renovations sooner, and all the neighborhoods are kept together. Cons would be short-term crowding in the elementary schools for a period of between 2 to 3 years, depending upon the length and duration of construction. And some specialists, particularly at POF, would have to have their their classes conducted on a cart, which is something that happens at many of the other elementary schools at this point, but is currently not happening at POF. This option also does not use all of the capacity at the 6th grade center, with only 1 grade located there. It would continue, but modulars are not needed, so that's eliminating a huge safety concern that the committee addressed that was also widely expressed by the community members that came to the meetings. The IF portion and the NIDIG project involves a $10 million renovation and a $10 million addition. So the total cost of that IF is $20 million. Okay, so this slide may be hard to see. The board members do have it in their packet. This is the proposed elementary class sizes. So just briefly, what this would mean by taking the students from TV and dividing them up, class sizes would increase by an average across the district of 2 students, with most grades seeing 3 students. 2nd grade, if you look, would have the largest increase with 4 students per classroom, and then 4th grade would actually see a decrease of 2 students per class. But as you can see, it would be an average of 2 students across the district. And then this slide reflects enrollment and classroom capacity by building. So we're looking at each of the elementary schools, what the current enrollment is, what the 17-18 number of classrooms that's being utilized is, what that would look like, what the 18-19 projected enrollment is, and how that would increase with TV students being divided amongst those 4 schools. So for example, NIDIG would go from 398 to 431, which is an increase of 33 students. Richland would go up by 43. And then you would see the 18-19 number of classrooms that would be used. So for some of the schools, it would not change. For other schools, you would see that more classrooms would have to be used, and that was the example that we had there for POF, with specials having to be pushed onto carts for a period of time. This slide is used to demonstrate whether or not there's room in each of the buildings. So what we have here is a way for you to see that capacity enrollment is tight for 2018 and 19 with little to no room for growth, but it is doable. The numbers do work with the way that it is. And after the renovation and addition, which is the if portion of the option that we're presenting, capacity is increased, and based on the data, enrollment is actually projected to decline. And this is just another slide that shows you that overall there is room in order to be able to move all of the TV students into the current elementary schools that would be remaining if TV should close. It's crowded, but it's not impossible. This map outlines the proposed neighborhoods and kind of where they would go to school. So what you'll see here, the black line, the thick black line currently represents the TV boundaries. The colors represent each school that specific neighborhoods would attend. So this map really demonstrates that all the neighborhoods would be kept together. For example, POF is the orange area on that map. Okay, then the transportation impact. Nancy had worked hand in hand with Levy to go over what the impact would be on student bus times. So overall in the district, no student would ride the bus any longer than 45 minutes. Some of the students' bus times would increase by somewhere between 20 and 30 minutes. And this would be particular to students that are living in the area of Hickory Drive, and then students who are living kind of on the far end near Cherry Road. This slide also kind of demonstrates that transportation impact. The range would kind of be more refined, you know, as we got closer and we're able to look exactly where the students were coming from, but this is an estimate of what their ride times would look like. Additionally, one of the points that the committee wanted to bring up is that there's planned anticipated funding for 2 more buses if it's determined that they're needed. And Steph will kind of outline that that's part of the budget numbers that you'll see, which that could help to mitigate some of the ride times. Okay, so this slide here outlines current ride times for QCSD students. So you'll see 23% of our students who ride the bus currently have similar or longer ride times to what students would experience if the board chose option A2. Okay, so again, the committee is recommending option A2 based on the assumption that the renovation and expansion of Nidec Elementary, as described in the 2015 facility study, will proceed immediately. I am a Nidec parent. I'm the Nidec representative for the reassignment committee. There are several Nidec parents that are here tonight. Nidec was built in 1958 and partially renovated in 1987, which is almost 30 years ago at this point. However, much of the building still remains as it was originally, and only a portion of the building was renovated. So much of our building is close to 60 years old at Nidec, and we're missing key core facilities. If you look at this plan, what it does is the short-term crowding is mitigated by the long-term gain in our capital facilities plan. And it's often overlooked, particularly at our elementary schools. So what are we getting for the $20 million? This slide was pulled from the facilities plan and kind of outlines what would be involved there. So you have half of the costs associated that would focus on improvements to the existing building, and the other half of the costs would be focused on the 200-seat addition. So you're looking at things like roofing. The school would finally be made ADA accessible, HVAC needs, fire safety, fire alarms protection, things like that. And then I'm going to turn over to Steph.
Just wanted to briefly show there were, like I said, we met almost weekly for quite a few months, and during that time, in addition to the options that I spoke about earlier and the one that's being recommended, there were quite a few other options that were analyzed by the committee for whether it was for their impact on programs, disruption to students, impact on budget. Those we discussed briefly, and those are listed here on this slide and this next slide. But we didn't, after having those discussions and realizing that the disadvantages far outweighed some of the advantages, we put those options aside and really tried to focus on the options that would enable us to come up with a viable plan. So, in looking at these options, there's an impact. There's a financial impact for all of them. And one of the things I'm going to try to go through on this next slide is just to try to go over how do the various options that we spent a lot of time considering affect the finances of the district. This slide, for those in the audience, is really hard to see. It was posted on the website, and I know the members of the board have it in their packet. So I'm going to try to walk through the different components that you'll see here. Just get to my notes so I can see on my glasses. Okay, so the first one, option A1, which if you remember, that's the option where all the students would go to, from Tehican Valley would go to POF. The first column has implementation costs that you'll see there. Those implementation costs in the different scenarios comprise of mostly of modulars. Those are 1 year costs that you'll see there. So the $285,000 is the cost for 1 year for modular units. There is a setup cost, which is around $150,000, $160,000, and then there is also an ongoing cost to rent the modulars. So when you see anything in the implementation, that would be basically your short-term sunk costs for that option. The second column is the facilities plan investment. The administration has recommended and will continue to recommend that when building the budget, the board considers allocating money each year towards capital infrastructure to ensure that our buildings don't continue to fall in disrepair and address any of the urgent items that are needed. So those are the items that you will see here, that $1 million. In some cases, if we go down to, say, option A2, 1, the first line, that number is a little bit higher. It is $6 million. You'll see the 4 A2 options outlined in red. So the group worked with Jamie Doyle from Public Financial Management. We didn't come up with this on our own. We called in experts, and Jamie is the one who is the expert on the district finances. So we worked with her to say, if we wanted to do this option, this is what it would cost, the $20 million. What are the various ways that we could finance it? And we came up with 4 different scenarios. That's why you see 4 different options for the one that's being recommended. The first option, A21, is that we would use $5 million from the fund balance, the existing fund balance, to fund that. And then the $1 million capital investment that the administration would like to see in place for every year. So that's how we got to the $6 million. And then in terms of raising taxes, which is 3 columns from the end, option A21 would recommend that taxes would be increased. And this is not just a tax increase for the plan. This is a tax increase to cover your normal operating expenses, plus we would be looking for exceptions, partial exceptions, to fund the renovation and addition at 90, okay? So I don't want people to think 4.2% is going to be fully devoted to the renovation. There are operating costs that you have to cover every year. So that 4.2% would include partial exceptions, and in terms of what it would mean to the taxpayer would be $174 average tax increase. Option A22 would also use $5 million from the fund balance, but in that case, you would not be asking for partial exceptions. Okay, so you would just be basically funding it within the normal index and pulling the $5 million from the fund balance. Option A23, we would not be pulling anything from the fund balance in that scenario. And again, would be looking at a 4.2% increase. And then option A24, again, would not be using anything from the fund balance, and we would also not be asking for exceptions. So over the course of 1 year, you can see what the cost is. The chart at the bottom shows the 4-year impact and what that would do with those different scenarios in terms of what the investment would be and what the impact would be on the fund balance. I'm not going to go through each number individually, but you'll see option A21, the 4 years facilities plan investment is listed as $9.6 million. So that's the $5 million that you pulled from the fund balance, the $1 million each year in capital investment, and then the additional amount would be principal payments towards paying towards the debt that would be required to fund the renovation and addition. The if you look at the last column, the average age of the schools, Nancy Ann was kind enough to pull together to take a look at, with some of the changes that we have made, the closure of Milford, what's the average age of our schools. Currently, the average age of the schools without a renovation or addition is over the entire district is 18. With the implementation of A2, with the renovation and addition, and addressing the needs at NIDIG, that would bring the average age down to 14. I know there's a lot of detail on this chart, and if you have questions, we will take them at the end. Okay. The next slide, again, just gives you an overview of how we are progressing towards the facilities needs that were identified by the Facilities Committee over the course of 10 years. So with the original facilities plan, we had $66 million in facilities needs that would need to be addressed. That was just things to bring our buildings up to where they needed to be. There was no additions included in that. It was really just to address the needs of the various buildings in the district. By closing Milford, we were able to close that gap to bring it down close to $50 million, and that was purely done through cost avoidance. Nothing other than that. And then as you go through, if we went down to where renovating NIDIG would be, if the board would proceed with approving the recommendation with A2 with doing the additions at NIDIG, that would bring those facilities, leftover facilities items down to in the $20 to $30 million range. Okay. So the last slide, A2, with the if, our rationale for making this recommendation, and I would like to preface this by saying our recommendation is conditional upon doing the renovations and the addition at NIDIG. If the board would not proceed with the renovations and addition at NIDIG, we would not be recommending A2 as our option. But the reason that we are is it does have the least amount of impact on students. There's no temporary cost. Everything that you invest into this project does get invested into our buildings for the long term and addresses the needs that have been identified by the facilities plan. And it gets us back on that track. It also eliminates the need for construction for, we would think, a 5-year period unless there is significant unanticipated growth in the district. So based on what we know today, if we proceed with this, we would not need to finance any additional construction for 5 years. Now it's time for questions, which I know I'm sure you have a few. Anyone?
Can you do me a favor and define core facilities for everyone? As in regards to NIDIG.
Core facilities would be classrooms, a cafeteria / gym. In some cases, it does not have to be a separate facility, just somewhere to hold all of our classes. So classrooms, special rooms, nurse's office, an office. And again, a core, whether it be a multi-purpose facility or a separate, it depends on the building. I mean, Trum has a separate, they have a separate cafeteria and a separate gym area. Richland, it's all one multi-purpose room.
Did you say that it's your impression that after the addition's built, there's going to be a decline in enrollment?
Right now, there is a slight projected decline in enrollment. However, if there is any anticipated growth, any new developments, that number would obviously go up. Those enrollment projections should be in your binders that we received.
For the sake of everybody, I'm asking.
Yes.
Were you all aware that the projections, the enrollment projections that were given by the Schrader report, that the actuals numbers were about 80 seats higher than what they had projected?
I'm sorry, when you say enrollment?
So when the Schrader report actually projected the total enrollment for the entire school district, they projected that based off of the birth numbers and
Correct.
Things like that. So I went back and I looked at it, and wanted to see if they were accurate, how close they were to last year's numbers when they projected that in 2015, I believe. And the numbers were about 80 seats higher than what they projected. So I just wanted to know if that's something that you all had looked at. And also my question, I'm kind of curious to know the thought process behind how you all incorporated the new developments into those numbers. If you could just explain that, that would be helpful.
Sure, Kaylin. So just so I understand your first piece, you looked at what the actual enrollment was compared to where the Schrader Group had projected it would be. Yes, we were aware. We knew that first grade had a large spike, an unanticipated spike, and if you look at the actual enrollment numbers, you will see that bubble at the first grade. So we discussed that and did include that overall. In terms of your second question, we did discuss the new development. We did get a head count per home, and we received that from Nancy, and I can't remember who provided that to us, but we did get, so if a development has 100 homes, new homes, you can expect this number of children, school-age children. The challenge for us is that when we looked at, we know when developments are approved, and we know of 2 that are going to be breaking ground or have broken ground since we had met. Any other developments, they could be approved. For example, the one behind the Q-Mart. That development has been approved and on the books, and it's right there now on there as age qualified, not age restricted. That's been on the books for, I would say, 8 to 10 years. We don't know if that is going to go through as currently approved. They could change it. So all we could go off of is what we know was approved and was close to breaking ground. And we did take that into consideration. Anything over and above that, I don't know if I'm speaking out of term, we could not consider. So we got the information from the townships, and that's really was our best source of information.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I believe there was one development that came up after you all had put those numbers. Well, I shouldn't say came up. It was discussed. I believe it's in. Does anybody know what community that? I think it was Trumbowersville or something. That there was a new development that's being considered.
There's one off of Tollgate Road. I know it's not Trumbowersville. Again, that's been on the books forever. Has approval, but has not shown any indication that they're going to break ground.
Okay.
There's a couple of those out there.
So in the A2 proposal, during the interim time where the NIDIG's going under the proposed renovation, the room for error enrollment is about 194 students.
It's tight. Yeah, it's very tight, Dr. Sedicum.
Extra, and then the end goal, if you get this proposal to go through, is that there'd be a margin for growth of 450 students, right around there, moving into the...
Yeah, I don't know the exact number, but it would be close to that. I do want to note, too, I have heard some people suggest, well, why don't we just renovate NIDIG and not do the addition? If you renovate a building, in order to meet PDE requirements, you actually lose capacity in that building. So just renovating NIDIG, doing the $10 million, you lose approximately 150 seats from how NIDIG is currently being used. So that is why the group considered looking at, when we look at NIDIG, looking at the renovation and the addition together. It is an additional $10 million for the addition, but to your point, Dr. Sedicum, it does enable us to address the capacity issue for the next 5 years.
Now, just out of curiosity, is there a rule of thumb for head count per houses built that we sort of work with?
There is. I don't know what the number is off the top of my head, but we do.
0.3.
Okay, because I was saying, like, with a capacity of 450 students left there as a margin of cushion, I'm just curious about how much more development would have to happen before we start looking into that next phase of building again.
Yes, and I should note that should there within the 2 to 3 years, I'm not sure how long it would take to do NIDIG, should there be an issue at NIDIG, there is room. It's not something that would be ideal, but to ease the crowding, there is room to put modulars at NIDIG to ease that. Again, that would be a short-term sunk cost that we do not want to proceed with. Thus, the reason to get started, it would be a last resort, but it is a possibility.
I have a question as far as class sizes. Did you all evaluate homeroom class sizes? Did you look at other, like
homeroom at the elementary?
Yeah.
We looked at averages by grade, by school. So we did not look at specific, Mrs. Goldrick's classroom has this number of people and Mr. Huber's classroom has this number of people. We looked at it by grade, by school.
Okay, that's what I thought. And my son goes to NIDIG, so I know it definitely is in need of repair for sure. I guess my concern, the reason I asked the question was, I know that he also has 28, he has 21 in his homeroom and 28 in his math class. And they don't have any room for any more kids. So I'm just wondering if that was taken in consideration, because certainly that will present a challenge.
Yeah, and we did discuss that. My kids were in a similar situation when they were in elementary and in middle school. My experience has been, and I don't know if others could speak to the same, but the principals at the school and the administrators at the school do an amazing job at ensuring that the kids, they're in a classroom that can accommodate and it would not adversely affect instruction. There's always going to be that possible one classroom or two classroom where you have that push point. My daughter was in a math class with 32 students. Very challenging at a middle school level. Very challenging for the teacher. They all made it work and made sure that I didn't see any adverse impact in terms of performance, and she never commented that. But again, that's just been my personal experience. So
that's the standard versus plus system. Could you elaborate on that a little bit, Ms. Edwards, about how that happens?
Yes, we actually had gotten an email about that, and it kind of mixes apples and oranges when talking about class size. In 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, we have plus classes for students who qualify. We don't cap those classes, so the size of those classes is determined by however many children in the grade level qualify in a given year. So actually, the larger our elementary buildings become and the more sections they have, the less likely we would have a disparity in class size. There was a parent that had written a question about that that I had answered, and I only answered it this morning, but the example I gave to her is if you have a school and 30% of the children qualify for the plus class in a particular grade level, if that school only has 2 sections, then you have a huge class size disparity because you have 30 in one and 70% in the other. If that building has 3 sections, then it evens out pretty well, because then there's 30% in the plus class and 35% in each of the standard classes. If you have 4 sections in a building, then you have the larger class is plus, but there's 23% of the students in each of the standard classes. So the standard class plus class size issue is not related to would not be related to anything that was done as a result of the closure at Tehican Valley. It would occur in any case. It wouldn't be alleviated by adding sections, because the grade levels as a whole have the appropriate number of sections. And so I don't want that issue to be mixed in with the do we have enough room for the students issue. So if that was the question, that's the answer to that. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Could you help me understand a little bit about your rationale behind the timing and the sort of concurrent need to do the addition and whatnot, like
sure,
maybe from a student basis or an enrollment basis, or why did you require that to happen immediately?
Well, the one reason why we wanted the addition done immediately was in doing the addition at NIDIG, we could again, it would be up to the architect, but you could do the addition, and we've talked to them about this, do the addition first. That then creates swing space so that as they are renovating the building, very similar to the approach that the board took with Nidegg, or not Nidegg, Richland. When they did Richland, they did the addition at Richland first, and then they used that space as swing space so that when the other areas of the building were being renovated, those kids in that area or that wing would then move into the swing space as the wing was being renovated. The sooner this happens, the fewer number of months and years that the elementary schools are tight.
What is the consensus of this body there that did this with no if? I would
with no if, we would recommend option C2, which, if you recall, is to make the 6th grade center a 5th 6th grade center, and that would require modulars, 8 to 10 modulars along 9th Street.
Which still has an expense along with it, obviously,
Correct.
$250,000.
It does, yes.
Setup, if I recall.
There is a $160,000 setup cost, $120,000 each year, and then there's a takedown cost. So you would, the first year obviously would be your biggest expense, and then every year thereafter, you would have a minimum of $120,000 invested in the modulars.
That would be for the 6 modulars.
For 8 to 10.
8 to 10.
8 to 10 modulars at the 6th grade center, current 6th grade center. What's that? Yeah, that doesn't address any of the issues identified in the facilities plan. So you're not really making any progress there.
I just want to say that the presentation and the work that you guys, gals and guys, have done is amazing. You know, from a workplace environment, it's rare that I see such well-informed, well-spoken, well-researched presentation. So kudos. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you all did a really great job. Thank you. President Kern? No, President Klein, I apologize. Yes. I have a question, and I don't know when exactly procedurally to ask it.
Yes.
What happens if we don't do anything for at least another year?
Okay.
What does that effect does it have on a budget?
I think when it comes up for the vote, when we get to that portion of the meeting, there'll be a discussion on that, and then that would be the time to ask that.
And who's going to be the person to answer that in this meeting today?
As far as...
Well, there's going to need to be an answer to the question if anybody is expected to vote.
It would probably come from the administration.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm sure that's the end of Dr. Harner's report, so we will move into...
He's long gone. I think he left.
Yes, he is. Actually, he took a Pasadena. So we're going to move into the committee report section of our meeting. You were done with your superintendent. Okay, thank you. Even though I am no longer the policy committee chair, I'm going to read the policy committee report tonight. As the new chair, I'm sure, isn't quite ready to do that.
No, I am not.
Okay. All right, there was no policy committee meeting. However, we do have several policies that are up for review. The following policies have been reviewed by the administration and are presented tonight as the first reading, and will be on the January 25 Policy Committee meeting agenda and on the board agenda for second reading and board approval. They are as follows. We are combining the 3 categories, classified, professional, and administrative employees, into one policies. This is an ongoing process that we're doing to try to streamline a lot of the policies that we have. First policy would be 1023, the use of tobacco. This combines the current policy 323, 423, and 523 to create one policy for all school personnel. The next is policy 1024, personnel folders. This combines 324, 424, 524 to create one policy for all school personnel. Policy number 1042.2, jury duty. This combines 342.2, 442.2, 542.2 to create one policy for all school personnel. Then there's policy 1001, creating a position, combines 301 and 501 to create one policy. The first reading tonight for policy 702.1. We've combined policy number 322, gifts, into 702.1, gifts, grants, donations, and will recommend retiring 322 on January 25. First reading tonight for number 150. This is a new policy, and it is a required policy for schools receiving Title I funds. There are specific guidelines for the use of Title I funds. First reading tonight for 918. 918, Title I parental involvement has been updated to be compliant with the federal program requirements in order to collect our federal funding for Title I, II, III, and IV. This policy requires an annual review and has not been updated since 2006. Second reading and board approval will be on the January Policy Committee agenda and the January 25 board agenda for approval. This will result in the following policies, which we can retire again at the board meeting January 25. Policies 301, creating a position, 501, creating a position, 322, gifts, 323, 423, 523, all for use of tobacco, 324, 424, 524, personnel folders, and lastly, 342.2, 442.2, 542.2, jury duty. So there you have it. Any questions?
Everyone awake? Yeah. Told you it would be fun, Jennifer.
Yeah, thanks for giving me that role.
Now you see what you have to look forward to. Okay, moving on. Mr. Jackson, would you care to do the Bucks County Intermediate Unit?
The Bucks County Intermediate Unit met back on November 21st. That was the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. We do not have a meeting this month, but back then we had our meeting down at the lower end of the county. They always have the November 1 down at the Samuel Everett facility down in the Chamonix School District, I believe. I included a summary of the meeting on the board docs in front of you, the awesome news, which highlights a lot of the activities that the IU is involved in. And for those people who care about what's happening in Harrisburg, we have a legislative liaison who gives a great summary of the ongoings out there. So that's all included on board docs. That's my summary of our meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. While you're at it, would you care to do the Quakertown Education Foundation report? And the Ed Foundation met yesterday morning.
There were, again, for those people not familiar with the Education Foundation, we're a group comprised mostly of local business leaders, certain members of the administration, a teacher representative, who get together and solicit input from the teachers who have innovative ideas on how to better educate their students and need additional funds to do that. We had 3 what we call mini grants approved at that meeting. I see Mr. Wien back there. We approved your BattleBot, sir. He actually came to us for a request for money for kind of like a miniature BattleBot arena, if you've ever seen that on TV. Nothing as fancy as that, though, but it was pretty cool. We approved a mini grant for one of the elementary school teachers who wanted to put on a play about the real American history. which was fairly interesting. And another one which really took us by surprise was a high school teacher who had several biology students wanted to create a vermiculture, which we all immediately tried to figure out what that meant, and turned out it was a worm farm. So those are some examples of the creative things that our teachers are doing. And I want to remind everybody, all the teachers there, that the Ed Foundation has money. We are dying to give it to you. We just need people to come and ask for it, which sounds crazy, but there's a lack of teachers coming to us and asking for this money that's available. So I always put my pitch out there to the Ed Foundation. So there you have it.
I would have guessed the worm farm was something to do with rats. So thank you, Mr. Jackson. Okay, it's now time for the first public comment section of the meeting. Madam Secretary, has anybody signed up for comment? Okay.
Chris Spear.
Please state your name and area of residence, although you know the drill.
Chris Spear, Milford Township. I'm coming up here to speak publicly tonight to first congratulate the new board members. It was a good, hard fight. And also to congratulate the reassignment committee. I attended just about every meeting that, actually I did attend every one except for one. So I stayed up on it and I tried to follow as much as I could. And I do believe they came up, their A2 recommendation, if you choose to close Tohickon Valley, would be the best choice if you choose to close Tohickon Valley. What I'm going to say is I wish that the district and the board and everyone else put as much work as they did into their recommendation into trying to save Tohickon Valley. With the new law that was just passed, I had to write it down. Actually, I don't know the number of it, but it's the bill known as the Education Code that Dr. Sedicum brought up at the last meeting, which states that no longer do school districts have to close buildings or have a decline in population to be able to furlough staff. That's not a requirement any longer. So we don't really need to close schools to reduce staff to save money in this district anymore. The $20 million that they're proposing for the renovation and addition onto Neidig is also just about exactly the cost to renovate both Tohickon Valley and Neidig, according to the Schrader report. So why lose 400 seats at Tohickon Valley to only gain 200 at Neidig? It doesn't make any sense. You could spend the same money. And the other thing is, too, if you decide to just renovate those two schools, both of them, you could spread that out over further time and probably avoid any tax increases above the Act 1 index. So you could avoid possibly taking those exemptions. This is something that shouldn't be voted on tonight. There needs to be more work put into what you can do. They did all the work to what to do to close Tohickon Valley. We need to do work to say, what can we do to keep it open? And like I said before, back when you were voting to close Milford, I sort of gave a threat to the sitting school board members where I said, a vote to close Milford will be a vote to lose your seat. And I'm specifically talking about the Milford Township residents now. If the Milford Township board members vote to close a second of our 3 schools, you will be voting to lose your seat, especially in the 2018 election. This, Milford Township before this had 3 schools. If Tohickon Valley gets closed, 2 of those 3 schools will be gone. So that's all I really have to say. I do believe there is a path that would actually be cheaper, be just as good, and we would have more seats at the end to absorb any possible expansion in this area. The other thing is there would be no redistricting, no student disruption. You would have to move the kindergartners back into Tohickon Valley, but I'm sure that could be arranged pretty easily. But thank you.
Hold on, Chris. So that path is the one that you just laid out for us. May I just ask before you go sit down?
The path?
Yeah, the path that you spoke of. You think that it would be to renovate 2 schools rather than 1. Is that the path that you spoke
Well, yeah, what they're proposing is to renovate and build an addition. I'm just saying just renovate. The Schrader report listed from the 2000, I guess it was a January 2016 Schrader report, listed the renovation cost for each building at about $10 million. Now, that full renovation wouldn't need to be done all at one time, too. It could be done in stages over the summers and probably spread out. So you wouldn't have to take that big tax hit right away and have to put an exemption and, have a 4.2% tax increase, which I'm sure.
So let me ask the committee if something like that was to happen. Is this on? That committee, if something like this was to happen, you had mentioned that improvements done to NIDIG would essentially require us to squeeze down the class sizes, I guess, due to new requirements?
Correct. You would lose 150 seats at NIDIG. 75 to 80 at Higginbotham. Lose capacity.
But it's still a net gain over just building an addition onto NIDIG.
It is a net gain, but it's not.
A net gain as far as financially, but...
No, net gain as far as capacity, too. Keeping both schools open, even losing capacity in both, will give us more seats in the end than just putting an addition on the NIDIG.
Chris, I have to run the numbers, but you're talking maybe 20 to 25.
The other thing is, too,
And just to note, the growth in the district is over where Richland, and NIDIG, and QE are. That is where the growth and all the new developments in the district are.
for right now, but like you said, there's only 100 houses with 0.3 students going in each one, so it's hardly any growth. In fact, you're banking on it going down. So I'm talking about future growth that you don't even know about, stuff that could very well come from Milford Township. There's a lot more space in Milford Township for growth. And there's a new hospital being built.
Correct, but the zoning in Milford is not as
Now you're really projecting, though. I mean,
no, I'm not projecting. I'm telling you what the...
You're right. You're right. The zoning in Richland Township is easier. But what I'm saying is you're putting all your eggs in that basket. If you decide to just do NIDIG and rebuild, this isn't affecting anything. Plus, you could spread this out and not take that tax hit. You know, you guys could really kiss your 0% tax increase goodbye. That's not ever going to happen if you deal with any of these plans. My plan, their plan, not doing anything plan.
With regards to the growth projections, I think they worked with correct me if I'm wrong, a 5-year window with a sort of foreseeable future type of blank in there, but the clock would start ticking at looking at how the growth in the district is and where it's apportioned about 5 years from now. So the thought that all of a sudden neighborhoods will start popping up all over Milford that'll put a demand within that time doesn't seem a particularly practical one right now.
I don't think it will either, but here's what I say. I think it's still cheaper to have, say you had a big school, it's cheaper to have an empty room in that big school. You just turn the lights off and don't use that room than it is to have to keep all the schools at 100% capacity and then get to the point where you have to build a new $40 million school on West Pumping Station Road. Once you close and lose that property, it's going to be gone.
Right. So, and with regards to the exceptions, anyone who's seen me here for the past couple of years knows how I feel about exceptions. Yeah, I know. And so one of the things that in the number crunching is there are a few other financing options that will get hashed out if it comes to that to avoid those for the optic impact of it. Yeah. Which the thing is, if you tell the small businesses that our budget here might not be balanced for another year or two to avoid the exceptions, that's politically a little more palatable for them. As far as with the A2 options, basically the range for our balanced budget from Dr. Harner ends up being between 2020 and 22 in that range with each of the options. And so me personally, I would find it more acceptable to have our budget meet the balance 2 years later without having to take the exceptions, because one of the things that especially the small business owner taxpayers recoil at is when tax rate hikes go up, they don't seem to come back. And so one of the things is to make a net where that never happens. So that's one of the numbers that no matter what is decided will be crunched, and you can bet that I'll be back here protesting anything that would lead to an exception.
Yeah. Well, what I would ask you, what I'm really just bringing this all up to ask is to say, give a different option. With the law change now the way it is, it sort of changes the playing field here, that it may be possible now to still meet your budget goals, meet your facilities goals and everything else, and not have to redistrict anybody and not have to lose another property. And I think that should be something that's worth looking into. Dr. Harner's email this week said that you really need to have this decision made tonight to meet your Act 1 preliminary budget goals. You didn't vote to close Milford until August. You got plenty of time to make this decision. This doesn't have to be done tonight. So.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Spears.
Thanks, Mr. Spears.
Others have signed up?
No.
No? Okay. Would anybody else like to publicly comment at this time? Please state your name and area of residence.
Stephen Ripper, Haycock Township. Chris, I disagree with you, and I disagree even more with your threat of the Milford people. This is a community school district. There's 5 other, there's 5 municipalities. And for you to threaten the other municipalities by putting board members out, I think is wrong. And I also think that the people from Milford should all notice where's all the complaints about what was going to happen when we closed Milford. I went into the school and there were no complaints. I talked to students, I talked to teachers, and this was right after your transition when you think most things would be going chaotic and wrong. So the Milford people, I can understand you have children, I had children too. I've been paying taxes in this district for 45 years, longer than some of you people are old. And I sent 2 children through. And you say, oh, we don't have children in this system, so we don't know anything? Excuse me. I think a lot of you younger people should read this book if you haven't read it already. Okay? Check it out. Tom Brokaw, The Greatest Generation. This generation is a generation that put this country on top. We didn't have all the privileges and all the special things that you had or your children have now. And we still accomplished great things. I say knuckle down and do more with less. You keep taxing another $174. I talked to people when I was campaigning who said, my taxes go up another $1,000, aggregate. I might as well go and rent a place. It's costing me $1,000 a month just to live here. So consider that. The other book you should read is The Teacher Wars. We elected 2 socialists on the board, and the socialists are the main ones, the communist socialists, who worked hard in the teachers' unions. Okay? I'm not against unions. Another good book you should take a look at, and these are the books that we on the board read together and discussed. The State of the American Mind, another good read. My main purpose of coming here was, I wasn't here at the last meetings, and I wanted to thank the administration and the rest of my past board members. I wanted to thank you for all the generosity you gave in assisting me in performing my duties as a director over the past 4 years. I would also like to thank our teachers, whom many I talked with on varying issues within the field. we have for the most part, an excellent group of dedicated teachers working hard with their students every day, and some, I have to say, go beyond the reasonable expectations of the job. It is the few, however, who do not perform well day to day that demean the process of teaching our children the information they need to become successful citizens. To the new directors, I hope that you are able, in the next 4 years, to find a way to contribute to our district in a meaningful and productive manner. Serving the public requires many hours of thoughtful and fair consideration of all the players' suggestions and opinions. You are also charged with doing the best for our community's children, but often are limited by institutional constraints and government dogma from doing the best job. With our community's tax dollars, I hope that you'll be able to be fair, practical, and be conscious that there are financial limitations. The sky is not the limit. My advice to the administration, the board, and the teachers is to work together and learn to do more with less. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ripper.
Mr. Ripper, thank you very much for your 4 years of service on the board. I appreciate you and your commitment, and I can tell you're very passionate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to make public comment at this time?
Is this the appropriate time for me to answer my question?
No. Please state your name and area of residence.
My name is Vic Bartholomew, and I live in Milford Township. I'd just like to say that if you're going to close Tican Valley, I think it's sad that we're going to lose another school in Milford Township, mainly because from where I used to work in the district, it's because of lack of preventative maintenance on a monthly and yearly basis. Because what I noticed when I worked here, whenever there was another building being built, whether it be POF, Trimbarsville, or the high school, the other buildings were neglected, and that is a fact. I worked in those buildings, and we would put in requests for certain things that we needed to keep that building up and running, and it was no money, couldn't do it. Myself and the guys I work with, maybe I'm patting myself on the back, but we kept that freshman center, and Mr. Anderson will attest to it, as one of the best buildings in the district because we put our own time in and our own materials to keep that building working. If you don't have an aggressive and a true preventative maintenance program, no matter what you do to any of these other buildings, and I said that when you did the high school, they're all going to be going downhill but quick, and they have to be taken care of on a daily and a monthly basis. If not, all this, we're going to be spending money every few years, be doing something else. That's what you should be doing. If you're going to vote to close Tican Valley, and it seems like that's what you want to do, then get ready, because all the other buildings that as they age, they need work. They have to be kept up all the time. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When you said you used your own resources, what did you mean by that?
Well, we would come in, we would bring our own tools in, we bring stuff in from home, and we needed to paint, we brought our own paint in, our own primer, brought our own screws, nuts, bolts, pipes for whatever we needed to fix, we brought it in from home, just so we could keep that building going, just to keep it nice, and that's what we did. Mr. Anderson, anybody that was in the freshman center, when it was the freshman center, it was the nicest building in the district. There were never any problems there. Kept it going because of the dedication of the people that worked there, because we were district employees. We weren't outsourced employees.
That's what I was going to ask next.
We took pride in our work.
And who do you work for now?
Oh, I'm retired.
You retired from the school district?
I'm retired from the school district, yes.
Was it because of the privatization?
Well, I stayed on for a while. It just got to the point where I didn't see any much of a future. And I used to be a machinist. So, and I worked with a guy who used to be a machinist. We worked together at our previous job. So we knew how to take care of things. So that's just what we did.
And did you work for the private company after?
No, I was always a district employee.
Okay.
And I like to think I was one of the better ones. I think you can ask Nancy Ann.
Thank you for your thank you for your commitment.
I may have a big mouth and complain, but I always do my job.
I appreciate you speaking up. Thank you.
Yeah, your complaints are also
Mr. President, if I may, Vic is no doubt had the finest looking facility. So looking at all the buildings, I tell you, you could eat off the floor every morning when the kids came in. They were always sparkling, and there's total truth to what his claim was, taking care of the freshman center. For the good of the new board members and for the members of the audience, beginning 2 years ago, the board authorized about $1 million of preventative maintenance and maintenance things that came out of the facilities plan that several members of the reassignment committee were members of, but they came up with a recommendation that magic numbers are about $1 million a year that we need going forward in our plan to making sure that we keep our facilities going, and it's very prescriptive. And so we've done it for 2 years so far. The first year that was out of the operating budget. This past year, because of all the other issues we had with PESers and other things, that $1 million got attrited down to just a couple $100,000. But with money left over from the high school project bond money, the previous board, previous to tonight board, the old board, approved doing projects this next summer with this that made sure that we accomplish 100% of that $1 million worth of projects, which is redoing the freshman center parking lot, doing the bathrooms at Richland Elementary School. So we're sticking so far 2 years in a row of doing that preventive maintenance work.
So it would be fair to say, sir, that preventative maintenance is back on our radar screen?
It's more than radar. We have a plan. We just need to make sure going forward it's funded.
That it continues to be funded.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was going to jump in there because obviously 100% of Mr. Bartholomew's complaints are valid. I mean, it's how we ended up with that committee report from 2 years ago. And the thing is, when I first got here 2 years ago, if not every meeting, every other meeting, Mr. Bartholomew reminded the board of its shortcoming in the past, fortunately before I got here, in maintaining that that maintenance budget and staying on top of those. And so one of the charges that the administration was given has been to how to prevent that with all the capital going into these renovations moving forward, because this is not a situation that we want to find the district in again.
Any other public comment? Please approach the podium, state your name and area of residence.
My name's Tom Peterson, and I live in Milford Township. I've taught every science course offered in Pennsylvania from 7th grade to AP Physics. And I've never taught in a building that was less than 30 years old. These buildings were maintained, and I support the minor amount of money that it takes to maintain a building rather than to build it to new PDE specs. None of the rooms that I was in would meet PDE specs as a new building. And we made Blue Ribbon School before Central High School. The quality of instruction was not sacrificed by the quality of when the building was built, and some went back into the 20s. I want to let you know as a board that maintaining the buildings is more important than building a new one. I was amazed tonight not to hear one word about what it would take to maintain Tehickan Valley. Until Chris spoke, there was not one number. When Dave asked, what's it cost to keep what we've got? The answer was dodged. And somebody tonight needs to answer the question. What is it going to take to keep Tuhican Valley open? It's not option A, B, C, D, subset this, subset that. If you haven't looked at it and you haven't presented it to the public, you can't make a decision about that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, moving on. We're moving into the items for board action. First item is approval of the minutes from the last board meeting. So would somebody like to move to approve the minutes of the November 9th, 2017 meeting of the school board directors of the Quakertown Community School District?
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Seneca. All in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. And moving on, we are to the public comment on the closing of Tuhican Valley Elementary School. We just heard a lot of public comment about that. However, is there any other comment that anybody would like to make? Okay, thank you.
Is that me now?
Hold on.
All right.
We'll get you there.
I just need to make sure I don't miss my opportunity on a formality.
And I have the same question as Dave does.
Okay, we're moving on to the closing of Tuhican Valley Elementary School. There are 3 resolutions that have been prepared by our solicitor, Mr. Garten, and they are as follows. Resolution number 1 would be to close Tuhican Valley Elementary School effective with the commencement of the 2018-19 school year and accept the Elementary Reassignment Committee's recommendations of option A2, which includes renovations to Neidig Elementary School. That's the if, right? Okay. As well as other elements of option A. Number 2 would be to close Tuhican Valley Elementary School effective with the commencement of the 2018-19 school year. Number 3 would be do not close Tuhican Valley Elementary School with the commencement of the 2018-19 school year. What we're going to do is we're going to ask for motions of resolutions 1, 2, and 3 in the order that they appear on the agenda. So, is there a motion to approve?
I'd like to make a motion to go with Resolution 1, the closing of the school effective immediately with the recommendation of A2.
Is there a second?
Second.
That's Mr. Jackson. And by the way, this will be a roll call vote. So,
Wait.
Comments?
I'm so sorry.
Discussions?
Can I motion to table the vote?
You can.
I'd like to motion to table the vote.
I second.
Okay.
I third. And I want my question
speak
answered.
about that? Can we talk about that right now?
Well, you've moved the order to the motion on the table now is to table it. So a discussion would surround your motion to table it,
Yeah,
not the previous thing.
That's what I would like. So my concern, and I feel sort of like this has like been set up on purpose. You know, the fact that on my very first board meeting that I have to make a decision to close a school, I feel is inappropriate. And it's not for lack of studying, it's not for lack of researching, and I have poured over this information. And despite doing that, I still don't feel comfortable in making such a big decision. And there was no way for us to stop it, right? So you all in the previous board decided to put this on the agenda, and I attempted to contact you all to let you know that I was concerned about this, and there was no way for us to do anything about it except for now we're able to table the vote, or motion to table the vote, I should say. I think one of the what's really important to our community, and they have made that clear, is that they want us to take our time to go through these type of really big decisions. And I'm not sure that I can say that I'm comfortable with the information that I have to make that type of decision. And I don't know what we gain by making this decision now versus next month, just even a month from now. So I guess that's what my question is, and I pose it to the rest of the board members, is why tonight? What do we gain? I understand that we need preliminary budget, that's understandable, but in the case of Milford, we did that very last minute. So I appreciate us wanting to get in front of this, but I don't feel like it's appropriate for new board members to be expected to make this kind of decision
without all the information.
Yeah, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. We do not have any numbers on what it would cost to renovate Tohickon and keep it open. I thought that the decision to close Milford, I live in Milford, was done very poorly and very quickly. And I think that the public, a lot of people in the public felt that way too. And we really would like some more information.
So my question is this: what's the end goal of closing the building for the board members that have been here? It's to reduce operating dollars. Is that correct?
Yes.
Part of it, right? And how do we? It's part of it. So we plan to do that by
reducing redundancies is one of the main things that would be achieved by closing Tohickon. You'd be able to have a single administration. I believe that it was about $1.6 million a year. You're going to have to correct me, that's the number annually.
Is it 1.7?
Oh, there, yeah. It's about 1.7 million and some change annually moving into forwards. That's it's a structural savings that we carry forward. The savings from renovating a building or saving this building, or those are one-time transactional savings. What we're looking at on the Finance Committee, at least we were going into this, was what is going to create a situation where we don't end up behind the ball in the budget every single year. And so basically the Milford, the savings there, will we save $1 million or something doing that closure? But we save a little over $1 million a year going forward because of reducing the redundancy. So between the two closures, we're upwards of $3 million a year, which pretty much offsets the PSERS adjustment. So basically, the budget will come in January. It's going to be somewhere between $5 and $8 million more than the projected revenues for the next year. And then in those meetings, there's crowing and hemming and hawing about what can be cut, while preserving programs. And the direction given by Dr. Harner is certainly, by me and shared by the members of the board, I think universally, is to not cut programs. Things that can't go. Sports, arts, music. What's the other big one that we sports, arts, music, those are the big ones that are the ones that are on the table, the low fruit. And one of the things that the decisions of the board of the past couple of years has done is to avoid using the low fruit. 2 years ago, the committee came in with the facilities committee study came in, and they were looking for $66 million to get everything up to code and to perpetuity. In addition to that, 4, 5, 6 years down the road, constructing $45 million, which is going to be more than that in all reality. But the thing is that we're looking at $110, $115 million expenditures over a decade. And in the past 2 years, we've effectively brought down the bottom line dollars into 20-odd million bucks, somewhere between 20 and $30 million, effectively through cost avoidance, saving the district $70, $80 million by redistricting, by using the resources we have and shuffling what we have. So, and without cutting programs, with maintaining the integrity of the district. And what we were able to pull off with a 30% poverty rate in our district is absolutely amazing. I mean, this is a good school district, you know, and it's funny, one of the things people always say, oh, my kids don't go to the district. In my wife's family, they all go to Catholic school, K through 8. And then after, I went to public school, but when 9th grade comes around, the family tradition is to let the kid decide. My wife decided to stay in Catholic school, and her brother and sister went to the public high school. And I'm committed to, I'm cheap. Anyone on the board knows I'm cheap. And what happens is, if we have a district where my kids choose to go to the high school instead of me having to send them off somewhere else, I'm going to be pleased as punch on what we've done here at the board. You know, so the underlying goal. What's the underlying goal? It's institutional savings. It's savings that go on, not just save money here and here, but change our operating budget in a moving basis that carries from year to year. Why now? Well, one of the contingencies about making the Milford decision go through, the if for that, and the approval that came from the people that presented that, was would Tohickon Valley would follow. This is the if to that. You know, there wasn't support for the Milford unless it was part of an ongoing plan that went into the future. And so here we are at that. If anyone remembers the Haycock school closing, it came up. The board voted it down, and through hemming and hawing and doing, like Mr. Spears said, looking at the alternatives, found none and ended up closing it later after stringing the community along for half a year. You know, the Milford thing came up quickly because it came up after last year's budget, and Dr. Harner was unable to find ways without exceptions, which we had already voted against, to bring it down, to bring it back. And so, you know, that's where the thinking out of the box came. So in this situation, what I've heard, and what I'm really glad to hear, is all the hiccups, all the doomsday, all the things that were going to be terrible after the Milford closing and when the rubber hit the road, it hasn't happened. You know, teachers and students are pleased in the new facility. I hear it constantly. I've heard very little complaint. I heard a lot of it coming up to it, but I really haven't had people, and I see people in my office all day. I see 4,500 people a year, and I do not hear the complaints in the execution of that plan that I heard in the proposition of it.
Are you talking to teachers?
I'm talking to teachers, students, parents. I had parents yesterday that came in, and they have a 9th and a 10th grader, and the mom told me that the 9th grader is actually having more fun than her 10th grader had. So, you know, there are going to be people who have who have different opinions, obviously, but the overwhelming response has been
so my
positive.
question was a leading question because, you know, one of the things as I mulled over the information that was presented was regarding the teacher-student ratios. And taking a short-term increase in that, or allowing a short-term increase for a long-term gain, may be more palatable for some of us than saying that we're comfortable with class sizes at the most vulnerable time in a kid's education, according to the STAR report that you and I were arguing about that one board meeting. What is the board's ultimate goal with getting to that number that's reasonable? I don't think 26 is a reasonable number, and that's what I struggle with this decision. It's not about the building. It's about, really, for me, the teacher-student ratio, and increasing that. I don't know what the downstream issues with that are. But one of the things that I worry about are kids on both ends of the spectrum not getting the attention, or even figured out the attention that they're going to need. And so that's my question. What is the goal of the board? And what is the plan for, not tomorrow, but a year from now, or 3 years from now, or 5 years from now?
So let me just commiserate with how difficult it might seem to make this decision. I understand that. Be thankful you're not here voting on a budget. If you think you're overwhelmed now, January you get a preliminary budget like Dr. Sedicum, it gets even harder to try to make decisions about who gets the pain. Is it we just going to, choose my words carefully, sock it to the taxpayer? Are we going to expand because we could say, hey, we should get 20 kids per class. So those kinds of discussions, those kinds of things, we can set agendas, we can set goals as a board for the administration to walk to. But we agreed as a prior board, as Dr. Sedgum said, when faced with last year's budget issues, on a 2-year plan, and this is part of that 2-year plan, and it's about making permanent reductions, not small reductions, permanent reductions that go forward year in and year out. And I'm even concerned what's going to happen this January as we start our budget cycle, because it's a horrible institutional perverted mechanism that we have to play along with, that the state mandates. And if you think this is rough, wait till you hit budget season. And
it's not that we're not opposed to making difficult decisions if we have all the information. How many people are being furloughed, for instance? What are we doing with the buildings that we have? You know, you all have not identified that. I have no idea where we are to budget as of to date because I have no access to that information. I only have access to past information. So these are really important aspects of making this decision. I'm fine with making a difficult decision, but let's just start with furloughs. How many furloughs are we talking?
Where's the 1.7 a year come from?
Can I address each of your questions directly? I'm a big fan of answering the direct questions that were asked of me directly in return. And so far, a lot of us have skirted around the direct questions in front of us. A direct question: I don't have all the information. Frankly, I reject that out of hand because the website, the school district website,
does it say how many teachers are being furloughed?
And I'm sure you've all been on the school district website, contains a little tab called Reports, I'm sure you've all been on, which has listed on it every single presentation made to this board since the decision to close Milford, every single news article about the situation, and many other detailed reports about the closure. That includes a presentation from April, let me open it up so I make sure I say it right. Not sure, where is it? I put my glasses off, that's why I can't see anything. April 13th. Okay. Now, your question. We haven't said how many teachers are being furloughed. Also, an incorrect statement because it was clearly stated in that presentation the number was approximately, Nancy, correct me if I'm wrong, 37 was the number kicked around from both halves of over the 2-year cycle. The number was 37. Correct. So
a lot of that was actually supposed to be from attrition.
But again, whether it's furlough or attrition, those were the number of staffing, that was a staffing level that it was going to be reduced. Mr. Spear said, why can't we just renovate the 2 schools? Mr. Spear is often critical of our spending in the lump sum. $10 million here and $10 million here to renovate both schools will offset the cost of $20 million to renovate Neidig. Therefore, why don't we do that? However, he incorrectly ignores the fact that we are also gaining cost savings through reduction in staff. We are gaining cost savings through the cost of maintaining those buildings in a number of different ways. That's where the cost savings is there. The question about classroom sizes. Classroom sizes was detailed in the presentation you just received from this committee. Mr. McCucci is correct. We both are ardent believers in the STAR study in Tennessee, which clearly states, and I will say it for the record, 15 students per classroom is ideal in kindergarten. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing we could do? I'm not sure what the state average is. I haven't looked at it recently, but I'm certain that our state average is something like 20 to 21 students per grade at kindergarten level. Now, that's not an excuse for us to come in here and say, hey, at least we're average. We'd love to be better. But again, the reason we're doing this is a budgetary issue. And unfortunately, the highest budgetary cost we have is staff in all its forms. 37 teachers was the number presented. You said you did not have it. It was there. You were at those meetings. You've seen the information on there. This whole thing, and it's not hidden, this presentation was put in front of the public at the Milford closure statement. We are doing this to close a budget hole. And part of that budget hole is the staffing reductions we are targeting. There's a lot of other expenses that were also listed in there. If you say you didn't see it, it's because you didn't look. They're there.
You can let me know when it's my turn.
I ask you to please look. I've addressed every single direct question, I hope with a direct answer. You may disagree with me, but I believe those to be the facts as presented. Have at it.
Yeah, disagreements are fine. I think I welcome disagreements. We don't all have to think the same. You say that there are 37 that would be eliminated between, you know, now and 2 years from now. Well, I think it's important to know how many do we anticipate from retirement and how many do we anticipate furloughs. I think that's important. For instance, what are we doing with the buildings? What are we planning on doing?
Ms. Edwards, would you address that, please?
Oh, sure.
Yes. All of the positions that were eliminated in year one were accomplished through attrition.
There's 15, right?
So there were, no, I think it was more than that. But they all were accomplished through attrition without furloughs. The estimates that are in the presentation that Mr. Jackson is referencing is 15 FTEs of professional staff, which includes one administrative position and an estimated 14 FTEs in teachers, as well as a small number of support staff. That's the number that makes up the annual personnel cost savings. At this point in the year, we have no idea how many of those will actually need to be furloughs and how many may come through retirements. So if additional teachers resign or retire, then the number of teachers furloughed goes down and we get the savings through attrition, and that's what happened last year in total. But we have no way to know that at this point in time. And to address one other question, Mrs. Weed had talked about the cost to renovate Tehiccan Valley. That is also in the presentation and in the facility study. It's approximately $8.4 million. That property is landlocked and does not have the ability for expansion. And the Community Facility Study Committee that prepared with the Schrader Group the facilities plan that the board adopted anticipated the closure of Tehiccan Valley for those and other reasons. They originally anticipated building a new building and then closing it, but that turned out to be unaffordable. So the purpose of all of this, or considering the closures, is to free up money in the budget to be able to move forward with the facilities plan and to not run at an operational deficit. So that piece of context was missing from
And again, I
discussion.
believe this was in the presentation. So again, the comment that you weren't aware of why we need to move so quickly, I believe is also inaccurate. We've been saying since we voted to close Milford that to close Tehiccan Valley was part of that 2-year plan to close a budgetary loop. This is not news to anybody. That's why we're proposing this.
So to close that budgetary gap, okay, is included in the projection is the $1.7 million that we expect to save from Tehiccan Valley. That's including these 37 layoffs that were in the report. Am I on point so far? That's spread over both years. Yes, the 37. But this is getting into my point. We had almost 20 teachers that left by...
Yes, the $1.7 million is purely related to Tehiccan Valley.
Right, but it's purely. So additional layoffs to the 37 that we expected to taper off over the next 2 years.
37 included the 15, didn't it?
37 included the closure of Milford, the elimination of team time, the reduction in the elimination of the cyber program, and the closure of Tehiccan Valley. So that was the total. The positions related, some savings were from year one, some savings were from year two, and that is delineated in that April 13th presentation.
There's still one more year left to hit our 37-person goal is my point, and it's very likely that teachers may voluntarily retire regardless of what happens with Tehiccan Valley.
Yes, but we would have to replace them in the event that we do not consolidate buildings, then those teachers would need to be replaced. If a teacher resigned today in elementary, I can't just pick up the kids and send them to other buildings where there's other sections. We would have to hire an additional teacher.
I'm just trying to figure out where, like, our 1.7 projection to close Tohickon Valley, where's the money coming from? That? And it's by furloughs of additional teachers because we're going to consolidate classes into larger class sizes.
So savings and operational costs.
And there's
Building
some
operating costs.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you look at the slide at the end of the presentation, it's the summary of the slide from April 23rd that has the exact numbers on it.
It's like budget savings. This is operational. 163,000 per year for Tohickon Valley. Does that sound right?
Yes.
So I have some additional questions. What are we doing? What are our plans for these buildings? Milford, Tohickon Valley. What are we doing with the buildings? Was that in a presentation I missed?
Has anyone ever discussed it?
I believe the facilities committees have been discussing that. Is that correct?
That is not correct. Ever since the board made the decision to close Milford, that has not been one discussion in the facilities meeting about what to do with Milford, and there hasn't been a discussion about closing what to do with Tohickon Valley. Worked in our numbers. I believe numbers is if we sold the property, what the value would be, the approximate value. That's been in previous presentations. So a savings there. So it was intentional on my part as an administrator to recommend to the board or to leave it off the board's agenda until we just were here into the new year. So the savings would be if we sold it. With an empty facility, and as I talked to, I believe Ms. Mitchell in a previous conversation, what needs to be done with the two facilities. Standalone facilities like that are currently we can do whatever we need to do. Before the state legislature right now is a consideration for Act 97, which is a charter school reform. If they are empty, they would be open. If that passes in June or so, then it would be a possibility that they would get first right of refusal on those facilities. So that's about the only other information that the board would need to know, the community would need to know.
Okay. So in essence, the thought was we would sell the properties, but that hasn't been decided yet.
There has been no discussion since the Milford decision in July.
And that discussion needs to be?
That's a board level discussion.
A board level discussion. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Very good. Thank you.
And to your comment about, so the right of refusal, can you explain that a little bit more, what that could mean for us?
Yes, ma'am. What that could mean is having an empty facility, that we have not sold, and we've had expressed interest in purchasing the property, interest in the land by developers for housing. We've had interest from the township. We've had interest from others, developers, out-of-state people. If the Act 97 does pass, and a charter school, if they were interested in it, they would have the ability to come in and purchase it and then set up shop if they would want to.
And having right of first refusal means that anybody else that would have interest in that, either for development or any other purpose, would come after a charter school makes their decision.
If you're making a decision about that, closing Tohickon Valley or doing something with Milford, once that becomes a public knowledge, you're out there going to sell it, then they would get that right.
Well, that would make it something you want to move on pretty quickly.
Yes, sir.
Year if it comes.
But my intent was to wait a while. I've had community input on.
That would be if the facility stayed as is. If we flatten it, would they still? I guess would they wouldn't want to buy it?
Well, there's a new movie on that with Matt Damon.
Would you care to comment too on what are the effects when a charter school moves into your district?
A good question.
That's a very good question.
Makes everybody's game better.
Well, one of the things that
saying you're in favor of charter schools.
Well, one of the things you do is as a superintendent, the way I look at it, the way in a charter school sets up shop, a bricks and mortar program, not a online program, that you put a little compass, your one part of your compass in where the school is, where they're building the school, and you go out with your compass to the other point and go out and draw a circle 10 miles. And that would, a charter school set up there would impact probably 7, 8 districts, maybe 15 districts, that where students would be coming in from, and it would be problematic to their programs, I'm sure.
Yeah, one of the
besides
things
our own.
One of the things that I've hashed out before with the charter school, we talked quite a bit about the dance school and a couple of the ones up in Lehigh Valley that we sent to. And so basically, I'm not against charter schools, but I'm against them on the finance committee, because unless a charter school has a massive draw from our population, they are disastrous to the small wiggle room that we have. Basically, if a charter school takes 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 students, a couple from a grade here, a couple from a grade there, it's not enough for us to change our capital expenses. So what happens is they take out what we have to work with without us being able to change anything fixed. If a charter school opened up and sucked 250 students out, well, we get to make payroll and district changes and get to adjust for that budget because we can reduce our capital. So my opposition to the charter schools is to make us less attractive to be a source of students for them, because I don't want to have to crunch those numbers where we are losing 150,000 here and 200,000 there that we can't make up for in a reduction of ongoing expenses. So while the freedom of choice sounds really good on paper, and it's kind of neat to present to a parent, because what parent wouldn't want to hear, oh, just pick the school you want to send your kid to, send us the bill. That sounds great, but on the budget side from here, a couple schools around is much more disastrous than to a major charter influx. Mm-hmm. And so if it does come to the fact that we have to dispose of the buildings and that law does go into effect, it would be advantageous to the district to move quickly on having anyone but a charter school be the purchaser of them.
Right.
Everything I've read on charter schools is spot on to what you just said.
Yeah.
Nice convoluted laws around.
I really, the thing is, it really depends on the area. The charter, when you look at some of the studies, like down in New Orleans when they rebuilt, it's all but 4 schools in the district there are charter schools now, and they rank 5 out of 10 on as a national average. Very flat average school system, but they are besides themselves because prior to that they were 3. So what happens is they've gone from being a disaster of a school district to being an average one. But in some more affluent neighborhoods, like in Westport, Connecticut, for instance, you basically have a different a modus operandi for the charter school environment, and in those cases it's a win for it's a lose for the public school and a win for the parents up there, but it's a different tax base, and with our poverty level and the fact that our average homeowner tax receipt is about $3,200, Bob, from our average homeowner tax overall. So it's a little over $3,000, and yeah, and so each student we lose is a bill for $19,000 that gets paid out. So the in our district, charter schools are not something that are friendly to our budget at all. It's at different districts, or they have different structures. It helps, but so disposing that building, both of those buildings, in an expeditious manner would be advantageous to the district.
You mean flattening them?
You know what the thing is? Well, the thing is, it's not. They don't have right of first refusal yet. That may or may not happen, but if it does happen, it would be later in the year. I don't know how many charter school, corporations are salivating, saying, "Oh, look, Quakertown might have a building for sale in June." But there is there's no urgency to that, but there is an expediency to that. Whatever decisions that we do make, we need to make them in a timely fashion, especially if they're ones that are going to be inevitable anyway, so that we can know what our budget's going to be with as least confusion as possible going into the future. And that's the main reason why I support the timing of it, because we've worked hard looking at the numbers for, for these months. And the thing is, what heartens me is when a group of, moms and people from the other side of the bench here go into a report and say, unlike with Milford, we think you should close this school. And they say it enthusiastically. That speaks loud to me. And I asked Nancy Ann, are you a proponent of this proposal?
I support the committee's
recommendation. Yeah, she's been here forever, and if she likes it, it's good enough for me, basically. So that's basically my view on them.
I'll just make one more comment. I feel like I don't know how we expect to maintain the same level of excellence, academic excellence, when we are going to have a lot less staff to be able to try and accomplish the same thing that we are accomplishing today. And I know that and this is anecdotal, so obviously this doesn't necessarily mean this is the case for all teachers, but I know that our teachers right now, they do an excellent job, even though they're overwhelmed. So at what point are we going to continue to pile more responsibility on them and expect to maintain the same level of academics? So I've talked to teachers' aides who have told me they have double the amount of learning and support teachers that they report to, double the amount of core teachers that they report to, teachers telling me that the class sizes that are being reported by I guess the administration only reflect homeroom sizes, so they don't reflect the class sizes that some people are experiencing. And so I understand there is a gap that we have to close, but how often are you guys looking at the budget to date as well? Like I don't have access to the budget to date. I can't see, where are we with the fund balance currently. I know we came in a little bit higher than we expected last year. So there's a lot of things I just don't feel like I have enough information on. So, I'm just opposed to us having this decision tonight.
Mr. Riegel, would you like to speak to the information that's available on the budget throughout the year?
Our audited fund balance for 2016-17 at the end was $14,552,000. So that's actually lower than we had projected originally. Budget. I know they were talking that it was higher, but that also includes your committed pieces for retirement and capital.
Yeah, that $14 million is not money in the bank. There's a lot of that is already spoken for, correct?
Yeah, you couldn't just close shop and then you get $14 million in cash.
It's our reserve.
It involves the assets less depreciation on the other side, and so it's like any balance sheet. The retained earnings is not just cash; it's assets. So. 14 million might have $8 million in cash.
Okay. What does that mean?
What does that?
The property values?
That means things that you purchase.
Our computers, our property values, these nice
fully depreciated.
Okay, thank you.
How often do board members get updates on the budget?
Well, we usually do it through the finance committee.
So the whole board doesn't have visibility?
Well, we provide the whole board with that information.
Yeah, the finance committee is also, it's open to the public, and
it's right before a board meeting, so you're certainly welcome to come to that.
Well, I will be because I'm on the
yeah,
board.
actually, the last couple ones we held in here, and they were because there was stuff on the table, and so we actually met in here so more people could participate. But are we within, like, give or take $1 million within the projected budget from the beginning of the year? Like we're on track with what you.
Yeah, I think we originally projected that higher, and
it's
above 15 million, but
Yeah, I just keep being curious to say what you go on your comment about how much can we dump on teachers. I'm curious how much we can keep dumping on Dr. Harner to do the more with less thing. Every time I tell him, every time I tell him to get another drop of juice out of the orange, he comes up with another drop of juice. And the thing is, in our discussions, I said, can you pull this off without sacrificing academic performance? You know, the underlying concern, the big concern. Dr. Harner says, yes, I can. And since I don't always believe him because he's a politician, I say, Nancy Ann, is he telling me straight? And so, I mean, there's the spin. Well, the thing is, you know, because it's easy to say, yes, we can, but one of the things is that Miss Edwards is, she's my, I've been sitting here next to her, I've been watching her do due diligence. So I said, can we pull this off? And so I was a bit skeptical over summer. I said, you're going to be able to pull off this whole redistricting thing, and for the most part, with a lot less hiccups that were anticipated. You know, so the thing is, if they say they can pull it off, I'm inclined until given other indications that what they project is probably how it's going to go.
And the truth is that, you know, the beginning fund balance for this fiscal year is 14.5, and you build a budget that has a $4.7 million gap, meaning the expenditures are that much higher than the revenues, and the whole plan with Milford closing in Token Valley was to bridge that gap over a 2-year period. So if you don't bridge that gap, then your 14.5 is going to be under 10, the next year, and then it's just going to, that gap between, because then you're going to have increases in your salaries and benefits, so that gap's going to just get wider. So the whole plan is to consolidate, reduce costs, and get the expenditures in line with the revenue.
By the way, Mr. Eagle just snuck in the answer that you had to what is the effect of doing nothing, in case you missed it.
Well, there's also ways to cut costs in other areas, again, which I have not. I mean, just seeing my idea of what board members should have access to is down to the dollar. If I want to see what is being spent, I should have access to that, because
you got it.
You get that in the bills list every meeting. That is,
you'll get it
there.
I will get it. Okay, that's
great.
See, exactly, like I haven't seen that yet. So these are kind of examples, and not to mention, and I promise this is the last thing, it's getting late, but we are leaving ourselves no room for growth, none. So we're going to be jam-packed. We're taking a big risk by saying, by doing this, because if we happen to have more growth than we anticipated, we may not necessarily be able to build another school right away, because the property tax bill that was just passed to eliminate property taxes could keep us from being able to as easily take out funds to be able to, fund a new school. So we are taking a very big risk.
That is a risk, but a risk of possibly having to come up with $40 or $50 million 5 or 10 years from now is more palatable than actually coming up with $120 million over this time. So the thing is that sure there's a risk, and but that's a bridge to cross when it's a little more in front of us, because there's no indication that there's going to be a surge in population. With this setup, we have 400 plus seats that are potentially available for initial growth, and if you start to see it coming, then that's when we get together as a board and say, well, we missed that one, now what? That's a reasonable thing to be concerned about, but there's no indication that we're going to have that explosion, and certainly not within the 5 years. And this is a 5-year picture setting up for success for the 5 years after. No one wants to see furloughs come out of the blue.
Sure.
So this way,
but again, those projections were off in 2015. I'm looking at the Stabler report. It projected that we would be in 2017 to 18, we would be at 2,079 students, when in fact we were at 2,184. That is a difference of 105 students. That is a lot.
Yeah. So if they were off that much every year, it would take us the 5 years to get that capacity. So the thing is, if they're off that much next year and the year after, it's certainly reasonable to look at how we're going to house those students, in the meantime. But it's just not foreseen that we're going to have that explosion from
I hope you're
the
right.
data I've given. Yeah, I hope so too. Yeah. We try really hard.
Okay, we have 2 motions in front of us that we need to.
You have one motion. You have Ms. Mitchell's motion to table, which you have to consider first.
I know. There was actually 2, because the main motion was made and seconded, and then Ms. Mitchell motioned to table that.
Motion to table takes precedence.
Correct.
Okay.
So what I'd like to suggest now is that we vote on Ms. Mitchell's request to table.
That's not a roll call.
I would suspect that just knowing what I hear, I think there'll be more than one vote in favor of tabling it. So I think you should do a roll call just so that there's no misunderstandings to who voted for what.
Okay, so Madam Secretary is going to take a roll call vote, and just to be clear, if you answer yes, you are in favor of tabling the vote on the closing of Tahican Valley. If you vote no, you are in favor of voting on resolution number 1. Okay?
Mr. Anderson.
I'm sorry, was that no?
I know, okay. Mr. Jackson?
No.
Mr. Kern?
No.
Mr. Klein?
No.
Dr. Sedekam?
No.
Mr. Bonovitz?
Yes.
Ms. Weed?
Yes.
Ms. Mitchell?
Yes.
Mr. Mikucci?
Yes.
Motion fails 5-4.
Right.
Okay. Back to the original motion to approve Resolution 1 regarding Tahican Valley Elementary School as presented. This also will be a roll call vote.
Does that include the spending? This is all one, right?
Yes.
A2 plus.
A2
Yeah.
with the if.
Correct. A2 plus the if.
I'll start at the bottom this time. Sorry, Mitch.
And just to be clear, with this, if you say yes, you are in favor of the resolution to close Tahican Valley Elementary School, go by resolution or option A2 with the if. If you say no, you are voting against closing it using A2 with the if.
Mr. Mikucci?
No.
Ms. Mitchell?
No.
Ms. Weed?
No.
Mr. Bonovitz?
No.
Dr. Sedekam?
Yes.
Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Kern?
Yes.
Mr. Jackson?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Reluctant yes.
Motion carries.
5-4.
Just keeping it real.
Okay. On to public comment on fiscal items presented for a vote tonight. Would anybody like to make comment? Okay, moving on to the fiscal agenda. First item is to approve the November 2017 Boucher and James bills list. Do I have a motion to approve the bills list as presented?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second it.
Dr. Sedekam. Was that you, Mr. Kern?
No, it's not.
Dr. Sedekam, okay.
Jackson?
Mr. Jackson, second.
Oh, Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Anderson,
sorry.
second. I'm sorry. Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Abstention.
One abstention, Mr. Jackson. Motion passes unanimously with one abstention. Okay. Next is a vote on the fiscal agenda item as presented in board docs. Is that correct?
But public comment first on
Oh.
fiscal consent agenda.
We already asked for that. So this is the B vote.
That was for Boucher and James. We did that.
Okay. I'm sorry. Okay, next was public comment on the fiscal consent agenda items presented for a vote. Those are a resolution for facsimile signatures, approval of the November 27 bills list, the treasurer's report, approved submission of Plan Con H project financing, approve October 2017 budget transfers, and approve the 2017-2018 bus routes, and a motion to approve a contract. Is this separate?
Nope.
Okay. It's to approve a contract with Nick Luchko, DJ Services, as presented. Approve rental agreement and invoice with Backdrops Fantastic, Inc. Approve rental agreement with the Costumer. Approve lease agreement with Canon Solutions America, Incorporated. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the fiscal consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Mr. Anderson. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Kern got that in there.
Okay, got it.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Minor point of order, Mr. President.
Yes.
Discussion should be offered up prior to the vote.
My apologies, I forgot that.
Just to, I was going to vote yes, but to Ms. Mitchell's request regarding budgetary information, I'm not sure exactly to what degree she's looking to know exactly how much we spend on a pencil or a sheet of paper, or how far it goes, but we do get a monthly treasurer's report and budgetary information on transfers. So, I mean, we are getting budgetary updates.
Now that we're elected, thank you.
Well, it's on the, well, certainly, but I mean, the public doesn't really know every dollar that's spent in the school district. It's just, yeah. So it's part of the public agenda offerings as well.
One of the things I'd like to, as part of the discussion, is thank our representative from Canon. He's out here in the audience. And Mr. Regal, we've been going back and forth negotiating negotiating in a downward direction, much to the Canon copiers representative chagrin, but very successfully with a bringing back a savings to the school district for high quality solutions. So I just want to recognize the good work that went on between Bob and our representative.
Is somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000 a year less than it was. Of course, you know, we consolidate with the consolidation. You need less copiers, or you utilize more, but you still do the same number of copies as you did, just less machines. But they're also providing a document service, so we're going to be able to control costs and paper. So we could see an additional $10,000 on paper if we can, you know, control those costs.
Literally on paper.
It'll be on paper.
Hopefully not.
Don't worry, we'll spend it. We got it. We'll spend it. Don't worry. We'll just keep voting.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson, and I apologize for messing up. It's the rookie up here today.
All good.
Okay, moving on to public comment on the human resource agenda as presented. Any public comment? Okay, we'll move to the human resource consent agenda, which includes professional staff, unit pay, support staff, and substitute aides. Do I have a motion to approve the human resource consent agenda as presented?
A motion.
It's Mr. Rachmanowitz.
I'll second.
Second. Kaylin Mitchell, second. Okay, any discussion? Yeah, I remembered that time.
Stop.
No discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next is public comment on policy and program items presented for vote tonight. Is there any public comment? Okay, moving to the policy programs consent agenda. Approve the service contract with Pediatric Therapeutic Services and vote on the policy and programs agenda as presented earlier. Do I have a motion to...
So moved.
Pardon?
Discussion.
After the motion and the second is the discussion.
Right.
That's
See,
cool.
man, I'm
See,
messing
that's
up
cool.
now.
That's cool.
Dang.
We have a motion to approve the policy programs consent agenda. Mr. Anderson, second.
I'll second.
Ms. Mitchell. Got it. Discussion.
I just wanted to ask, so do the committees come up with the agenda? What's on the agenda for each item?
For each committee?
For, yeah, like the policy and program consent agenda?
It comes up, you work hand in glove with the proponent that has that, the staff person like Education Committee. It's Dr. Hoffman.
Okay.
For policy, it's a combination of Alice and Nancy Ann.
Okay.
For finance, that you'll be a part of, and or facilities, it's Kelly Harper and myself.
Okay.
And finance, it's Zach and myself. You know, so we work through it together, come up with an agreement, put it out there, and then new business can be brought up.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Like in the policy committee, they're always reviewing policies.
Right, I figured.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Information items. We have PSBA Insurance Trust Travel Insurance for board directors. This is provided for all of the board directors. It's a life insurance policy for when we travel. Next is the board member listing. All of the new board members are on there now. It's been updated to reflect the existing board. The board briefing update. The enrollment report. The suspension report. And a QCEA group grievance response. Any discussion on any of those?
Okay, these information items, is there a vote that's going to take place?
No, they're just for your edification.
Just for,
no vote.
okay, because like I'm just looking at this grievance response and I'm.
Does this get posted to our website, all these things? Or?
Pardon?
It's in the board docs, if you, yeah.
Yeah, it's also out on the website.
So for instance, for the grievance, is there going to be, I know at some point if it's not resolved, the board does take action there. Is that just for our FYI in case we do have to
Yes.
get to take action?
Yep.
Yeah. So it's possible we might have to take action on that at a future time?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay. Final chance for public comment on anything that we've discussed tonight. Yes, sir. Mr. Ripper.
Oh, God.
Stephen Ripper, Haycock Township. I'm basically addressing my comments to Ms. Mitchell and Mr. Ochmanowicz. It seems awfully funny that the past 6 months you had plenty to say and you had all the information prepared and you came in here and you insulted us and said that we were in collusion and all this stuff, and yet you come here tonight and you're not prepared. You had 6 months. You want more time. Is that what you're going to do with every issue? Say, oh, we have to have more time? What'd you run for? You have to make decisions. And, you know, that's what you're here for. And it seems to me that we need to know maybe, you know, who contributed to your campaign.
Look it up, public record.
I know.
I will
right
look it up.
there. Go find it.
But maybe, you know, you're in the teacher's pocket rather than in the public's pocket.
Mr.
What
Ripper.
it seems. You're so concerned about furloughs and how many teachers. And when I went to school, there was like 35
about
in
our
class.
teachers.
It's a shame I'm concerned
And you
about
also
the quality of my students'
walked in that
education.
snow backwards and
quality?
all that other
Okay,
stuff.
okay.
Quality. I taught
Please,
for 10
please,
years. You don't know what
please.
quality
Mr.
is,
Ripper,
Ochmanowicz.
Mr. Ripper, thank you.
Can we skip news?
No, that's coming up next. Okay. Dates for board members' calendars. We have coming up on December 12th. There's a QCHS band. Oh God.
Band concert.
Band concert at the high school. December 19th, there's the choir performance at the high school. December 21st is choir concert performance number 2 at the high school. All of those are at 7:30 p.m. On January 11th, 2018, there's the Facilities Committee meeting at the DSC Community Room at 6 o'clock. Education Curriculum meeting, Community Room A, the DSC, also at 6 o'clock. And then the work session regular voting meeting in the Community Room at 7. January 25th is at 5:45, the Policy Committee meeting in the Board Caucus Conference Room number 3 at the DSC. 6 o'clock is the Finance Committee meeting, Community Room A at the DSC. And at 7 is the regular voting meeting, Community Room at the DSC.
I wish to speak up for the middle school. I'm a little upset that only the high school gets highlighted in these events. This Friday and Saturday, the middle school band has its concert. And next Friday, the middle school choir has its concert. Just so you know, because
Thanks for pointing
I have a
out.
middle school student in those presentations, and I just wanted everybody to know.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson.
Can I back up to number 18, board comment, new business? I have a question, Dr. Harner, about, we briefly touched on this, I think Mitch brought it up, but I'd mentioned it had to do with kind of surveying our school district employees for
the climate survey.
Yeah, I don't want to call it that because it sounds like climate.
Employee satisfaction survey?
What's another word
on this board?
Employee satisfaction?
Employee satisfaction is good.
Yeah,
That's
so
good.
there's a local company that my company was dealing with. It's called Energage now. It used to be called Workplace Dynamics. I guess they had to come up with a cooler name. So it's Energage. So I'm not sure if we should bring that up in one of our committees or bring it up to you now.
One of the things that I had recommended to Mr. Anderson, since he was the first one to bring it up publicly, was to have the conversation during our board retreat and talk about your objectives for that, and then we move forward with it, the January retreat, and move forward with the survey then.
I'll actually probably know more because we've been engaged with them now for about 6 months and getting kind of pretty, I got a good warm fuzzy about how they operate and helping our company, so I'll have I can make a presentation or something.
I like the idea.
Okay, thank you.
And that brings us to adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
A motion to adjourn the meeting.
Yeah, we have an executive session right afterwards that'll take about 5 minutes.
Correct.
Oh, we got to do group picture.
Thank you for...
Mr. Osmond
We didn't get a group picture.
with the motion, Mr. Anderson with the second.
Okay, thank you.
Let's close this up.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?